And let me welcome them. Let's see. Stop. Okay. It's live. This is the 4th of April. It's a 3-hour CE class, contract and forms. We have a few folks here finishing up. I'll mention Ginger. This is her last one before she's ready. And it's not deadline day, apparently. We've got a couple other people in here who got deadlines. And we're making them up. Contract and forms. Now, Christy, did you get some of the material back here at the table?
I did not.
That'd be good if you could grab you some too.
You know, I'm the class slacker.
Yeah, we gotta have one.
Yeah, these are all of my new contracts.
Well, it's got the new ones in it.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's what I want to show you is what you have.
Okay.
Yeah, and you don't need
Okay.
you don't have to sign that either if you want to. You can.
Okay. I have way there, so I'm gonna.
Anyway, so what we've got today, what we're covering is the contract and forms class. It's CE. We're making up some stuff here for Andrew. And so what I do is I run a group of forms that we kind of tend to use on a regular basis and one or two that we don't know we have. Ginger was in a class last week and she discovered a form that we didn't know we had. I've got it in here. So what I've got on this thing is it's an outline. Let me show these guys. Look here. It's an outline. And on the outline, it's got the various forms that we have in here. So let's look at just what's in here, because you might want to say, well, you know what? Let's go to. I'd like to spend a little time on this one or this one, and because I need some, I've needed to have information on it. So at the beginning, at the top, I added this 7-page exclusive right to sell listing form to the top. That's why it's A through G. Because I added it, I didn't want to have to redo all the numbers on this thing. And so, anyway, we could talk about the exclusive right to sell seven-pager. Then there's another form that's a listing form. So it is page 1 through 4. It's got 4 pages, and it's just the real estate commission listing form. Now, Christy, that would be very confusing. Mm-hmm. 2 different listing forms. Why? Well, one was put together by the real estate commission and blessed by them. This is my, holy water, blessed by them. And the other one is OMAR, Oklahoma City Metro Association Realtors, and they put theirs together. And they're different. They somewhat say similar things, but they are different, and quite a bit different. One's 4 pages, one's 7. That's one difference. And so we'll talk about it a little bit. And there's a couple of paragraphs on each one of those. If I'll guide it a little bit till you say, hey, I want to talk about this or that. Then we go into a disclosure section. So from page 5 and 6 and all the way through 14, we've got various disclosures and disclaimers. And then I've got the short sale addendum in that group. That's the one we didn't know we had last week. Down below that, we've got the purchase contract, which is the current one. We had a new purchase contract with changes in it that came out February 15th. So that one is in this packet now. I had to update this packet because it wasn't in there the last time I taught this, which is before February 15th. So that's new. Along with that, you've got your counter offers and buyer counter offer supplements. Then there's a bill of sale. I put my most recent best quality bill of sale in here, and so on. Then I've got the finance addendums. They are basically the same, but there's one change in those, or at least 2 of them. The FHA and the VA ones changed also on February 15th. And so they're in there. But what you can see here is the number. So let's go to page 33. That's a conventional finance addendum. Let's talk about it. See how it works? And then on the left, right there, it tells you how many pages there are of that form. So that's how it works. Down at the bottom, I've got the estimate of expenses, buyer and seller, and then your handout over there. One of your pieces is one I just updated yesterday just for this class. But it is actually the out-of-date expense sheet, except I've noted what changed. And the only thing that changed on the expense sheets was generally, the only net effect was the mortgage inspection report, which is like the survey. That was a seller expense on the forms prior to February 15th. But as of February 15th, and in this purchase contract that we'll talk about today, that fee in that contract says now it's a buyer expense. So what I've noted in this older version is the same thing, except in that one instance. So instead of redoing all of my calculations and stuff in that sample, I just wrote in there that this is a buyer expense, and I took it off there. And on the seller one, I basically said buyer expense on it, so you can see it. And then at the very last, there's I call it bonus page, and it's multiple offer information. So I created a little, it actually came from the National Association of Realtors, and but all their English was poor. They'll probably be watching this at some point. But I think it was in your class, Andrew, I had 3 editors over at that post-license class last July. And they were all professionals. I mean, that's what they did for a living. They edited books, they edited this, they edited that. I said, hey, take this piece of literature, let's call it, and take your red pencil and just go through it overnight and bring it back tomorrow with your suggestions on improvements for the English and the punctuation and so on. And they did. Brought it back to me, and then I updated it and I gave it back to them and said, is this better? Is this okay? And they all blessed it and said, I believe you. I believe it's perfect. So anyway, it's not my work, it's theirs. If you don't like it, blame them. But it's better than it was. And it is a document that is on our .loop material. And it's on Oakmar. If you use Transaction Desk, it's on both of those. So for you guys that are in the room, all of you but Christy, I think, have used these forms quite a bit. Logged in there, not unfamiliar with them, written contracts, gotten them signed, sold and closed. Christy's is new enough that I know she hadn't got that far yet, but she got buyers to work with, and I know she knows how to find it, at least in .loop. So that's just part of the class, and forever who might be watching here. You can find the forms in .loop. You can find the forms in Transaction Desk. The exact same forms, generally speaking. There's one difference. When you go to Transaction Desk and you're using the expense sheet, it will do the calculation for you. So I've got Transaction Desk, and they've got an app now where you can put on your phone or on your iPad. And or if you just log into Transaction Desk. I don't log in for anything except the expense sheets. And I do like to log into there because I don't have to add them. Just punch in the numbers and it calculates it as you go. And it's just, it's a spreadsheet situation where I don't know why .loop doesn't do it. I'm suggesting that you do. Because what we are doing is adding it up ourselves manually, then we're going backwards and adding and then adding it again just to make sure we do the addition right. And if you've got a spreadsheet that's got the formulas in the fields, it's just right. It's automatic. So for whatever it's worth, that's useful to know. So Susanna basically says, I just use Transaction Desk on my expense sheet so I don't have to add it up. Then I download them and scan them in, and I don't mess with, plus I don't send them with anything else. I mean, they're just part of my file. So, all right, that's what we've got. Does it make sense? Mm-hmm. All right, so if the power goes out, we'll just go to the paper. Meanwhile, I'm going to scroll down here if this machine will work. There's the first page, got the outline on it. Welcome, Patricia. Make sure, did you get signed in? Good, good. All right, now we'll start with this. You might, just note on that outline, it's something that you say, I'm curious about that one. Or I could use a little shoring up on this one. Otherwise, I'm going to start and just kind of go wherever we go. And we'll see how it works. But there's a copy in every here. Now, there's more forms of this, but these are the ones you're going to use. And some of these you won't use often, but you will use these listing forms every time. You will use the purchase contract every time. The disclose, some of these others that go with it every time. So this form right up here is the exclusive right to sell form from Oakmar. It's 7 pages long. And so let's just visit a little bit about that form. A couple of things that catch us or would clarify some of our confusion sometimes. And first of all, I'll just point out, you guys are free to just questions or comments. You guys, if you have experience in the field, we'll leverage it. But right here, I'll just point out that the seller agrees to work through the broker and to refer to broker all inquiries received in any form from other real estate brokers, agents, associates, sales associate, provincial salesperson, prospective buyers or tenants, or any other source during the time of this listing agreement. That is just standard language, which means an exclusive right to sell, which is this form here. Anybody that comes from anywhere to buy this piece of property, even if it's your closest relative or neighbor or somebody else, they're instructed to refer to us to handle it. Also, it's basically says that last one. In addition, any compensation which is conditioned upon the sale of the property shall be earned by the broker as set forth herein without any discount or allowance for any effort made by the seller or by any representatives of the seller in connection with the sale of this property. So the compensation is just what it is. And we're not discounting it just because they themselves maybe ran into somebody that wanted the house. So just for you to know, that says that. Sometimes we don't know what this stuff says. Usually when I teach this class, I'll say, we're not going to spend any time on the blanks because nobody has any trouble with what goes in the blanks. It's the stuff in between the blanks that we forget what it says. So anyway, that's in there. The blanks are obvious pretty much. Lot, whatever, block, whatever, addition to whatever city, county, and then the address so we know what we're selling. And we're also conveying, by default, the minerals. The default language is if you own the mineral rights, you are selling them. And that has, over the last 40 years, gone back and forth in terms of default language. And I had the horror stories where when they switch it from one to the other and you get caught in that moment, sometimes you sold somebody's mineral rights and didn't know it because they're for a season of time, years now, it's been 15 years ago, probably or longer. That language said that the default was that they're reserved automatically. Well, they changed it somewhere along the line and I got caught. I know which transaction it was. Cloverleaf Manor over here off of I-35 and 240 in that little neighborhood over there. But we had a listing in there, Mom's house, and they said, we want to reserve the mineral rights. Mom owns the mineral rights. We want to reserve them. I said, no problem. I'll write it right here on my listing file. So I wrote it on there. And I said, at that time, the standard form said that they're reserved automatically. The purchase contract, when it came along, had that in there. Said the same thing in the listing agreement. So I said, okay, well, it says right here, if you own them, you keep them. But I'll make a note special on the file. So we closed the deal. Purchase contract changed. And it said it said this. Their default is you sell them. So about 3 weeks after closing, I get the call. Don, here's my phone. Don, did we reserve Mom's mineral rights? Oh gosh, yeah, I remember you told me we were supposed to. Default language said we would. So let me make sure. that got done. Hang up the phone, looked, default language is this: seller's right and title interest in real estate and oil and gas and other minerals included. So I had to call Ms. Cox back. I called the title company first. I said, can you look the deed up right quick that we just closed it 3 weeks ago. Can you pull that file up real quick? Let's make sure that what the deed said. No, she said on the deed, we conveyed everything, including the mineral rights. Oh my God. Okay, I'll call the realtor. Realtor, would your guy be willing to let us deed it back, fix this? Because I was supposed to reserve those mineral rights. Well, I'll find out. Call back. Only took a minute. No. So I tell these stories for you to know that when you pass this little section right here, let's just keep an eye on it. Now, right now, I'm on that forms committee. The first thing that came up last year, my first year on that committee at the Real Estate Commission, was this, to change it again. I thought, for God's sake, we just got them trained. Meaning, I just got trained. No, leave it alone, for God's sakes. At least we know what we're doing. And if you change it, someone's going to get caught in that little mess. And I wish it was the other way, frankly. Automatically reserved, and that was the standard language, so that if we did forget, we didn't sell something we didn't intend to sell. That'd be my suggestion. However, it's not that way. So with this listing form, we get all this. We do not get this on the 4-pager. One of the reasons it's 4 pages is it doesn't have all of these things that say they stay. If any, let's see, all that, improvements and pertinence, if any, and the following items, if any, stay. And so this list matches the purchase contract, the Real Estate Commission purchase contract, the standard form we use. The other one does not. So when you use the 4-pager, you don't have this stuff in there. And in that one, you didn't necessarily say that the propane tank's going to stay, or that all the remotes or the bathroom mirrors. All of that in this one say they're staying unless you reserve them here. And that's why I like this form, because here we have already agreed to what stays, including the window treatments and the flagpole and and the pool equipment. That's all in there. If you don't have it in there later on, when that purchase contract's written, it's in there. And the question, I remember just our group me messages. I've got a seller. We just closed. They're finishing. They're moving out. Can they take the fireplace screen? That was one on group me not long ago, about 2 months ago. And so my response was, if they didn't cross it out, it says there, fireplace inserts, log grade doors and screens remain. There's your answer.
So that includes unattached screens.
Yeah, there's screens, and I guess if there's a separate screen out there, you probably ought to make sure. Yeah. Yep. That's why it's one of those that just sat there, just fold it up and take it. It looks like person.
That's some really nice ones.
Yeah, they are. So, but that says doors and screens, so we ought to make sure that's exactly why we need to know this. Which screen? So, we would write in here that we're following, we're going to the fireplace screen not attached, setting in front of the fireplace is reserved for the seller. That's where you put it in, but this is where we discuss it. And what about the speakers, built-in sound system speakers, built-in and under cabinet and counter appliances? Your can opener that's mounted under this cabinet is not yours if you don't deal with it. So that's the kind of stuff I'm saying. Take the time at some point and just read through these, because that's what you're selling, Mr. Seller. And when the purchase contract comes along, it will have these in there, whether you use this form or the other one. it will have these in there as stuff that stayed with that property. And what this says is what rules, unless somebody wants to be flexible.
And you, Don, on that shelving that says if attached, sometimes you need to make sure, because sometimes people that has it that's attached want to take it. So you need to make sure, you question that, because that I've gotten into that before.
Absolutely. One screw is all they've used to attach it, so it wouldn't tip over, but that's attached.
And
So
some people want to take it.
And they just, I'm going where they're going. It'll fit right perfect over in here where I'm going. Or I can put my paint over here instead of in the hot water heater cabinet.
Yeah. It's a really good place to have it.
Yeah, Mary.
So what's the difference of what we should put in that little blank below or put on the bill of sale? What?
Well, here, this is the listing form, and you can put anything in here.
Oh, okay,
That's
Okay.
yeah, okay.
Seller reserves, whatever, and anything, absolutely anything. But you're right, Marilyn. When we get to that purchase contract, that starts to matter what goes on there. And so that's why we have the class to clarify, to get it in living color.
If they reserve something, you should put it in the MLS too.
Yes, you should. Now, that's good stuff. Well, this is a good class right here. You reserve it right here. My bird bath out the front reserved. And now that's a personal property item anyway. And you could put it in the MLS printout, bird bath in the front reserved. But if the buyer writes in bird bath in the front to stay, in the purchase contract, all bets are off. That's what the terms are. So that purchase contract will override this. So you can reserve or do whatever you want to on this listing form and put it in the MLS. And it does not matter if it's not in that purchase contract. That's where we get caught. And I hear it all the time. We had it, look, it's right here in the MLS printout. The refrigerator, the washer and dryer stay. Well, I said, well, let's see your purchase contract. I don't see it in there. And I look a little stupid at that point, but ultimately right there is where it matters. And the rest of that is interesting, but it does not matter if you don't have it in those documented there. Because, I mean, the terms are what they are. They might say, well, sure, at that asking price and you pay your own closing costs and close on the day I wanted to close, I would have been more flexible. But no, you wanted closing costs and you wanted to close on that day and you wanted to offer that. And so, no, not under those terms am I leaving it. So I mean, that's what it is. They could just say, I just didn't want to close on that day, so no, I'm not leaving it. Or relative comes up and therefore during the transaction, daughter's refrigerator goes out and they call mom, what am I going to do? I can't afford a new refrigerator. Well, I got one over here. They didn't write it in the contract. You can have it. So all of a sudden now it's not available because she's given it to somebody. And if it's not in their purchase contract, it's gone. If it is in the purchase contract, daughter's bringing it back.
Or somebody's buying it.
Or somebody's buying another one. Yeah, that's why that all kind of matters.
The refrigerators stay?
No, they're not in this list here.
It's not on the list.
Not in the list. So if you're curious about, good question, go read the thing and see if it's in the list. If it's not in that list, no. And so,
I didn't think it did.
but that's where our bill of sale
I wonder why
comes
they
in.
don't have those in alphabetical order.
That would be.
Ginger.
Would you? Well, that would be easier because if you're like,
It would make sense.
Yeah.
But
Would
that
you-
means whoever wrote it would have to take more time.
Well, when we run out of other things to worry about, like how are we going to count for the earnest money, maybe we'll do that. But you got to remember, what do they call it? Curtains or window treatments? Is it a C or a W?
Yeah.
Come on, Ginger.
Well,
You gotta say window treatments because there's blinds.
That's right. That's why it says window treatments and covers interior and exterior, which it says exterior. You notice that? Window cover. That's, you could have shutters out there and your shutters
especially
stay.
now those that come.
Like the lines.
Mhm.
Yeah. So that's why I spent a little time on this, because that is a real important aspect. It's very much part, because it's on your purchase contract. It starts to tell everybody, here's what stays, here's what doesn't.
Maybe
And
they can be categorized in alphabetical order.
maybe they could, we could put it in
In categories.
groups.
Like inside out stuff.
Get you guys to,
Or
so do your suggestions, put it in writing, and let me just take it over there.
Okay.
In fact, go ahead and
Everybody write that down.
go ahead and alphabetize them while you're at it, and that will be a lot easier for Clifford over there
I
too.
would do that.
All right, now,
Never noticed.
I've got a quick question about that, Don.
Yeah.
So I just had a listing and they put in the purchase contract that the pool equipment would stay. Did they just kind of, I guess, did they just do that as a safety net to make sure?
they should put
Since
it in
it's
there.
already on there?
Yeah, well, it's in there, that's right. Probably redundant,
Yeah,
but they want to make sure that, well, here's why. They didn't read this.
right.
They didn't know it was already in there.
Mhm.
So that's the same thing with that screen thing, that if you don't know it's in there, you write it in and just say it twice.
Right.
No law against it. You're emphasizing. You could put it in big bold letters, underline it, and screen it, you know. But ultimately, that's why, because if you haven't read it and it says swimming pool, small equipment, and accessories, then you don't know that that's already in your purchase contract by default.
Yeah.
So, on the other hand, you might want to be more specific. What pool equipment? Does the cleaning thing stay? The little thing that runs around, that's a valuable thing. It's $800 item. Does that stay or not? So that's maybe where it'd be good to be very clear. That's my suggestion on any of this. Very, very clear. Could a third grader understand what you wrote? That's the danger with writing anything yourself in there, is you understand what you mean, but not everybody else understands what you meant. And common. That's why we have standard clauses. Hang on, what page is that? Standard clauses, where are you? Oh, I've got it. Oh, there it is. Page 30 and 31. We might get to them. Page 30 and 31 of this stuff has the standard clauses in it, which are then, let's look at them. That's what this is supposed to be. Let's just go straight to page 30. Oh, isn't this handy? And you can just go down the line and say, these are things that come up from time to time, but we do need to add. But this language is kind of blessed by legal folks and others that have looked it over and said, this is a good way to say it. Some of the biggest risks we have is that when we have to make up the words and say it, because the problem is we know what we mean, but saying it so that somebody else knows what they mean is different. So I'll point out number 7 on there. That one you'd use. Now, I would suggest we cross out the last part of it, the termite treatment. The standard form just basically includes termite inspection or a treatment as just part of the repairs. It's just a standard, whatever you're negotiating on repairs. The problem is that the lenders aren't going to be negotiable on termites if they haven't. So seller agrees to pay cost of termite treatment in the event that active termites or other wood destroying insects are found, period. Cross out the rest because there's no repair cap in this form anymore. That's some work we need to do just to get that out of there on that forms committee. So there used to be a repair cap blank in the forms a couple years ago. It's gone. So that's not in there, but that's standard language. Now this language, termite in the event active termites or other wood destroying insects. That's why we suggest the standard clause, because if you've got carpenter ants and you just say seller to take care of the termites, then the buyer is going to be paying for carpenter ants, and they eat food too, or eat wood too. It's not as expensive, but it's still a couple $100 to treat for carpenter ants underneath that window. They tend to be in one little spot, so it is less expensive. They don't have to treat the whole house for it. And they can, they can deal with it with just a spot treatment. But it's $200 for under that window, at least in my experience in Old Stonebridge. So I've only had carpenter ants once in 40 years, but that's once is enough. That's why I like and other wood destroying insects, that covers everybody. So that's an example of using a standard language, and that subtle little thing in there covers you for everything where you might not think of it and write it that way. And so, let's see, what's the other one? You've got a court approval of a probate. So if you've got a probate situation, you've got at least on number 9 in there, some of that. Number 2, flood insurance. Buyer and seller understand that the property is located in a designated flood zone, which may require flood insurance as a condition of financing. So that could be language that you include in your special provisions section in your purchase contract. But anyway, there are standard clauses. There's a couple of them for as is and not as is. Tax deferred exchange 1031 if you have that situation going, or if you've got a bridge loan or second mortgage, some language there. Anyway, this is the most recent version, that 11/2016 version. So there are the standard clauses, and that's why I bring them up.
So
Now-
these added on to like an addendum?
Well,
To it.
you could probably, in this, there's section, in this form, where is it? Right here. On this one is special, just special information on your purchase contract. It's item 13, which is just, you can just add in the language here where you've got room to write it or put it. But in your purchase contract, you've got a blank just like that under section 13, which is called special provisions. All right, I gotta get back to this first page. You see, I could spend all day on just the listing form, just this one, as you can tell. But it's important. I want to touch on 1 or 2 other things. Right here, you guys can figure out what goes in the blank on this price. But sometimes this blank is handy. Commence on is different than, could be different than the day you listed it. So we've got people that say, you know what, I'm ready to list my house. I need to clean it up, get it ready, paint, whatever. I'll probably have that done in about 10 days. Well, you can list the house, do all of this, have them sign it, date it that day on the back, on the last page of this, but then put the commence date to be 10 days from now, or 2 weeks, or whenever they're going to be ready. So the commencement date is the date that matters to real estate, to the MLS rules and regulations, because they're saying, I got them handy over here in case I couldn't verify this if you'd like. I got them handy. But these right here, they are, I printed them out January 26th. They are out of date because the Supra lockbox rules in here are out of date. They're talking about still leasing the lockboxes. We haven't leased the lockboxes in 1.5 years. So they haven't updated those, but they do have the language in there where it says 2 business days. So from the commence date of your listing this property, you got 2 business days to get it in the MLS. But that doesn't mean you couldn't have listed it 30 days ago. You listed it 30 days ago when they were just ready. You were there, signed the thing, dated it, but you put in here commencement date 30 days later or 10, whatever. That's the date, though, that matters when it comes to those 2 days. And that is also the date you put in the MLS when you say, here's the date of the listing agreement commences, is whatever's in that blank, not the blank at the end. You go all the way down through here, and at the very end, you got a date, signatures and a date, and you get around about here, and they're executed by seller on this date. That's the day they signed it. Commencement date does not have to be the same day. Very often it is because they're ready to go. We just make them the same day. We're going live, putting the sign up right now, put it in the MLS, and within 2 days, and off and running we are. So anyway, let me see if there's anything else here. I'm just going to highlight.
Called pocket listings. People are asking about pocket listings. So is it because they got the commencement date at a different time?
Yeah, you could say so. Or it's just a listing that you're going to get. You don't have it yet, don't even have it listed yet. There's no contract, but you just know that they're coming up. That's kind of a pocket listing, they would call it, where you just know it's coming up. So the spirit of these MLS rules are, we'd like for everybody to have an equal shot at selling it. We all agree together that that's what would be fair, But pocket listings aren't always fair because you know that it's coming up and you have a buyer for it. And there's nothing to say that you just don't call the seller and say, hey, would you mind showing this thing? I got somebody I think would be interested in it. And then nobody else in the room got a shot at it. So the spirit of all this is basically that's what they're trying to go for. But that happens, I'm sure, several times a year. All right, now, the next page, we're not going to go over this. This is not broker relationship class because we just had that, Ginger. Remember?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, even the lights went out, we still
The
have.
lights went out.
We finished it up. But all the way through here, that is the Broker Relationship Act. Broker duties and responsibilities are part of what's required to be in the forms. The state law says, and the rules and regulations of the Real Estate Commission say that you're supposed to, in the forms that you used for, purchasing and listing properties, you're supposed to disclose what your duties and responsibilities are, and there they are, virtually word for word in this form and in the other one. So, including the duties to both and so on. So we don't need to go over that. We went over that, some of us. Andrew, sorry. You missed it. It was last week, I think. We get to commission to broker. I never have to train anybody on this part. No one ever has questions about how do I deal with my commission? It's inherent. People are born with this knowledge. So, but there's where you put it. Everybody wants to know where.
I do have one question.
What is it?
So Keller Williams charges a $70 review fee. Does that go in number 2?
No.
No?
Well,
Another
I guess you could. There's another form that we use that has it, addresses it, and says what it's for.
Is that on both sides, buyer and seller?
Yeah.
You don't have to spend time on it.
Yeah.
I was just curious.
But that is one of the reasons it's on a separate form with a list of what happens is if you're going to charge additional fee and it's not called commission, then you need to basically disclose what is it for. And that form is in our but it basically says, we're warehousing this paperwork for 5 years digitally in 2 different spaces, and we have a compliance officers, people that are looking at everything. It's a part of it was covered. But you have to be able to document what is the consumer getting for that if they're paying it, and the agent can pay it. Too. You don't have to explain it much if you're paying it. But if they're paying it, that's why we use the form, so we can disclose to them and then have it in writing that we told them here's what it goes to. All right, because this is commission, that's a different kind of a figure, but that's where the conversation came up a few years ago, where the government was saying, if you're going to charge $500 transaction fee, you better, by God, have $500 worth of value, and you better tell them, here's what you're getting for that. And some did. You get a tour with when we do this, or we do this and that and the other, but you've got to document where is the value. Otherwise, call it a commission and just charge 7% or 6.5% or whatever, and call it that. So anyway, when earned, payable, I'm not going to spend too much time on any of this. They're required to deal with the disclosures. I am going to touch on this one. Every time there's any italics on this Oakmar form, it's got several spots, 3 or 4 of them like that. And under the heading of disclosures, D, sell, protect, defend, indemnify, and hold any and all broker harmless from any and all damages, costs, attorney's fees, or expenses arising from seller's failure to disclose any defects of which seller has actual knowledge. So if they are not honest about that sewer line, and it's broken down back there, and they just don't tell anybody, including us, we are not liable for that. And we're not responsible to discover it. But there's some language that basically makes it clear right up front. If you don't disclose what you know, and it can be proven that you knew it, like when it rains 3 inches, this place floods. That happens, and that's normal for them. I mean, they just clean it up and go on with it for 5 years, and then they forget when they're disclosing that, but there's a question on the disclosure form about has there ever been any flooding. So that kind of stuff we're not responsible or liable for, at least by law and according to this document. So then we got some more of the real broker relationship stuff and the definitions. Who's the party and what's the broker services and the definition of broker. Let's see. We're going to put it whatever MLS that would be. You could put, what are you putting in there, Ginger? Oakmar, or what do you put in there? You put Oakmar. You could put MLS OK is actually the MLS system we're using, even if you're a member of Del City or some other board. But Oakmar gets it clear whose MLS system that we're using. And it authorizes, seller authorizes broker to place information about the property on the internet, either directly or through a program of the MLS. So they're syndicating, not only is it going to the MLS, but it's going out into hundreds of other websites all across the country as soon as it goes into the MLS. And they're authorizing it right there. And that means your stuff is going to be viewable, and pictures and descriptions are going to be viewable to the entire world. Are you okay with that? And so let's not get have your kids in the picture. Let's not put the dog in the picture. Let's just take pictures of the property. And every once in a while we see the dog sitting on the bed, and we run off everybody that's got allergies about dogs. So anyway, that's the practical reason why not. So anyway, authorization and so on as far as using the key. Here's some more italics. Here's some more italics. Seller, protective and indemnify. If those sound familiar, it's an indemnity clause. That's what it's called. Every time you hear these words, but it matters. And hold a broker harmless from any damage or claims arising from authorization to access to the property or the use of the key box, including but not limited to damages to or loss of real or personal property or personal injury not caused by the broker's negligence. Seller assumes all risk of any loss, damage, or injury. And so we need the seller to understand, if you leave your jewelry out, if your medication is just easily accessible, you have to take some responsibility for that, because people sometimes will pick things up. They could. Now, I've had twice in 40 years, have we lost something that I know somebody picked up when they showed the house, and we couldn't prove it in any event. In one instance, the people bought the house, so we said, well, we'll let you have the house if you want. But we would have liked you to left our pills in that drawer. But we knew exactly when the pills were there and when they were gone and who was there. The only people that were there, I knew it. And we negotiated and sold the house to them, and they closed. And the other time, it was just one of those occasions where the house is out there for sale. It's over in Park Glen Acres. And a realtor from Norman looked down the street at one and saw our sign and said, hey, we're already in the area. Could we just show the house? And the wife is in there cleaning up and just getting ready. But then we called her and said, would it be okay? They're sitting out front right now. Would it be okay if we show the property? Sorry for no notice, but they just were down the street and saw our sign. And she had been cleaning in the master bedroom, and she'd taken her wedding ring off and put it on a cabinet back in there. This built-in cabinet in the master closet. So she knew precisely where it was and when it was and all that, but she forgot to put it back on when she left because they were in a hurry, kind of, clean things up and then get out of there so these people can come in and look at it. And then that ring's gone when she gets back. So, we tried everything we could to just say, hey, did you just happen to bump it and it fell in your pocket, or we're not accusing you of stealing it, but we do know that it's gone. But at the end of the day, nobody ever admitted to it. And the insurance company stepped up, and she was pretty happy at the end of the day that it did happen, but I'll never forget it. But that clause, I think of that transaction every single time. That's a transferee with Walmart. And they've been referring us people for, several years. And all these upper level management people would be moving in and out of, and they would refer us, those people. And this is one of them. And so I just want to maintain that relationship. But the rest of the story is their kids all bought houses through us, and after that, and they were fine with it. They knew we didn't do it.
A big deal anymore is guns.
Guns.
Definitely.
I see guns and I'm just like, why do people leave their guns?
I
I see pills too, and I'm like, why are you leaving your pills out?
Oh, I know.
Exactly.
I know. Show, and I'm like, here's all these pills, and I'm like, people. You know, and I see jewelry laying around, and I'm just like,
And they might leave them in a closet.
I've had that with the, and I don't know if everyone saw my little rant on Facebook about these sellers is gonna make me shoot myself, but I went to show a house and the idiot would walk in and there was like a bong sitting over there like he had been,
Yeah.
you know, and
Oh, my
then
word.
a gun laying in the garage.
Yeah.
And I called him and I
was
lost
this
my.
your sellers?
This was my seller. I lost my professionalism. I just went off like I was his mom, you know, like, are you kidding me? And his dumb response was, I said, you got your drugs in here? Is weed a drug?
Oh, my.
What state are we in? I don't know.
I always ask about firearms, especially if you're bringing children into the house. You have to make sure that they control their children.
Yeah.
Because they will break things and they will.
I just tell them anything of, you know, value that, you know, you need to,
Just put it, let's pre-pack it.
yeah.
That's what I
repack
generally
it.
do. Let's just go ahead and pre-pack. This looks pretty precious. Looks kind of breakable.
Yeah.
We might want to pre-pack this ahead of time and get it put up. Is there anything else like
It
that
doesn't
that you've
even have to
got?
be valuable in terms of money. Because I know I showed a house when I was working for the property management company and somebody's little kid knocked something off the fridge and it was a precious item that had no value, but they were really not happy. And
Stuff happens like that.
Yeah.
But I mean, the pills thing, people are
That's-
just not thinking about that. I mean, they're right out on the countertop. They ought to be at least in a drawer. This one was in a drawer that I'm talking about in the kitchen, just in the drawer, kitchen drawer there. And
But people look through kitchen drawers too.
well, we encourage them to look in the drawers, look in the cabinets, look in the, look everywhere. And so they do.
Yeah.
And,
You just don't know how many people have a problem with drugs.
yeah, that's true. So anyway, prevent it. It's that philosophy of either you're going to be good at one of two different philosophies. One of them will be you're good at preparing and preventing, or you're going to have to be good at repairing and repenting. One of those two is going to be
Yeah.
you're going to have to get good at. If you don't get good at this one, you're going to have to get good at this one. And you'll be come to the rescue on a regular basis. You'll have your fire hose out. You'll put the fire out. You'll be in record time. Look, we got the fire out in record time. The problem is there's still something stinks, and there's smoke over here on the so putting the best philosophy is let's not have the fire, and so that's firefighting, and that's what we spend time on. Andrew, you've had enough closings that you've had to firefight. You need to get a fireman hat on some days and just walk in and say, I'm here to put the fire out. And it's just solve problems is what it is, but that's what you really feel like you're doing. I'm just putting fires out. Some days, that's all I feel like I'll get done. Is just put one fire out after another. And so we ought to just put the fireman hat on. We should. Just say, listen, this is a live Facebook post. I'm putting fires out today. These folks, we ought to let people know that's part of the work we do. All right. Here's when they put in bold. Limitations of liability. The property becomes vacant during the term of the agreement. Someone must notify their insurance company. It says that now. So if it's vacant or becomes vacant, we need to let, they're supposed to deal with whatever the insurance company is going to do or not do. Some of the insurance companies, they find out it's vacant, will just drop the coverage. Or, they'll cover it differently. They just want to drop, if it's vacant, they just want to cover the dwelling and so on. Anyway, there's a deal there. Broker is not responsible or liable for personal injury to any person or loss or damage to any person's real or personal property resulting from action of third party, vandalism, theft. Every time I read those words, I think of the transactions where the air conditioner was gone and there was somebody paying, on the fence. Freezing water pipes. Oh God, I thought about that one too. Dangerous conditions on the property non-compliance with the law, and so on. Seller agrees to protect and indemnify. There are those words again. It's not responsible under this agreement. But vandalism and theft, while we have our sign up, we're not responsible for it. At least it says here. And once in a while, we need to have to remind them, this says this. Because when that air conditioner comes missing, or you know, the bathroom, I've told you guys the story, but, you know, but the bathroom, master bathroom had a fire. And you guys got the house listed. So I should probably go back to the page that suggests or puts in there, talks about we're putting a lockbox on. And thank God, here's what I highly suggest. Put a electronic lockbox on it. Because if you ever get the call on our vacant house in Rivendell and there's been a fire in the master bathroom. Looks like somebody lit the candles and forgot to blow them out, and the paper caught fire, and it didn't burn the whole house down, but we've had a fire. What are you going to do about it? Oh gosh, I'm sorry. We do have some candles in there for decorative purposes, and it's vacant, so we were actually lighting them when we had open houses, but we blew them out and so on. So anyway, but the lockbox states that they're authorizing us to put a lockbox on. And that's the language that protects us if something happens. I didn't know this language existed when this happened to us, but you know, here, thank God the lockbox was on there. So we just called, we looked at the lockbox report up and said, well, so-and-so with such company showed it. She's calling us on a Monday morning. He showed it on a Thursday, and that's the last time the lockbox was open, Thursday. And that realtor and his buyers, a couple, were the last people in there. And they were our witnesses that said it was not burnt when we showed it the last time the realtor lockbox was open, which is the only way we have of getting in it. And so somebody else, is there anybody else that has the key to your house? For instance, your daughter who's still going over here to Westmore. I know you're moved up to Edmond, but she's driving from Edmond to Westmore. She's going. Is there any reason she would swing by maybe on a Friday night after a game? And that's what it turned out to be. She came, she went over there with whoever, and they lit the candles in the master bedroom and around the bathtub area. I don't know what. You can just let your imagination run. But she forgot to blow them out, and they did catch fire, and the fire was out. But I mean, it burned itself out. But it did burn paper, and there's smoke damage in that master bathroom area. So that's my story to encourage you when you're thinking, I think I'll just put a combination box on here. Okay, go ahead. I just hope this story haunts you every day that you have that on there, because I would not have had any proof of what happened if I had a combination box on there, because there's no way to record it. But Christy, that lockbox will record the very second and the very person that opened it. And it's a record. It's in, you know, it's in that machine.
Another thing on that is if you show up to if you're showing a house and somebody, another realtor comes up to show, go put that lockbox back in there so that.
That's good stuff. You hear that? That's good stuff.
Yeah,
You're showing the
I've had
property.
agents to get upset with me because of that. I'm just like, put on your time.
Yeah.
You know?
But, you know, because this is a record of, because if you leave the lights on, leave the back door unlocked, don't lock the side garage door or whatever, it looks like I did it. So I'm just putting it back in there. That way it records you that you came, you know, right after me. And that way we've got a true record of how many times it showed. That's why you can get upset all you want to, but your report would be off by one showing if I didn't put that back in there. And so it's not the listing realtor gets upset. It's the realtor that's coming in behind it. This one doesn't want to have to open the box up again. They don't have to unlock the door. Just open the box and
You know, I've had
leave the
an
door
agent
unlocked.
that approached me with their seller, and actually, and this became well, for those that know me, I really don't care, but he got upset because I was closing the lockbox, and then he went on to ask me if I could open it because he didn't have an MLS key. And I said, well, I can't help you. He's like, well, I can show you that I'm a licensed agent. I said, well, you're gonna need to make it. I wasn't the listing agent either, because he was trying to say, well, I can make an appointment and then you'll still have to meet me back over here to, I said, no, I'm not the listing agent. So,
Yeah.
and I mean, it was just.
Yeah, if he's a licensed realtor, he should have had a way to get in there.
Well,
Yep.
yeah, but I think he would have had to make an appointment with the.
Yeah. He may be just driving by,
Right, didn't have it.
didn't have an MLS key or coming from out of town.
I'm sorry.
You know, while I'm thinking that, I've said this now a couple of times, I think, Lisa, you, Kendra, been here, but on the subject of what we owe in compensation. When we list a property in our MLS system, we are offering compensation to members of our MLS system only. So if somebody comes from out of town and they need in, they may or may not be, probably aren't, a member of our MLS system. We have not, there is no offer of compensation to them. That's why, and this is reverse true for you. You're in Tulsa or McAllister or somewhere out of town and you just happen to, your relatives want to see a house. There's no offer of compensation. And then, you know, this has happened where Susanna's gone down to Lake Texoma and we had some friends basically. He had picked out 3 properties he wanted to see, nothing else, just these 3. Can you show them to us? Well, not really, but I guess if you insist, we'll drive down there with you and just enjoy the day and look at some lake property. $500,000, maybe it's worth our trip. Well, there was no offer of compensation there either. We didn't know it. I didn't think about it.
So you can't be the selling.
You can be, but you better get a compensation agreement. That's my point. Get a compensation agreement that says you're going to be compensated whatever for this transaction if it comes together in advance, and then go ahead with it. Now, we didn't do that, and very sharp lady had a listing on the one he bought, and but she sent something over when we're talking about compensation. She sent it, and it offered 2.5%. Well, $500,000 sale. We thought, a little disappointed. That 0.5% adds up. But I guess that's what it is. And so.
But if you'd have done it ahead of time and put 3, I mean, she could have come back
That's
and said 2.5.
That's
but
right.
At least,
Now, we made the assumption that that was a 5% listing and she was just splitting it. But when the closing day comes and you see the closing statement and she's getting 4 and you're getting 2.5, that's the day you're a little more disappointed than you were. Here at this company, our policy is to never pay a selling agent less than 3%. Same with you. 3% minimum to the selling agent. That's by policy. But if it's somebody from out of town, it's negotiable. And that's the point I want to make. I didn't know this. That if they're not members of our MLS system, there is no offer of compensation at all to them. It's just members. We all agree that if we're members of this little operation, we all get to participate and we know in advance what we're going to be paid. And that's what when that MLS printout says selling, 3% selling broker, that's just the members of that organization or that MLS system, not anybody else. So I say that for 2 reasons, but if you're doing that, just do your due diligence, and we should have before we showed it. Sent it to her and said, this is what we expect to be paid. And she had plenty, which she probably would have been glad to pay it. But we didn't. We just left it up to her, and she offered us whatever she wanted to. And
I didn't know that.
And
Words of the day.
But she technically didn't have to offer anything.
she didn't have to offer anything, actually. That's right. So I guess I should be grateful she gave her some. But at the end of the day, I don't know how many people know that. Not many. But now that I know what, I'm going to share it so we don't get taken advantage of maybe, or feel like we're obligated to take somebody else. Because if you're coming in, the point was they need help getting in and all kinds of stuff. So if they sell the house, now you got to run over and open it every time they need into for inspections and everything else. So it's extra time and energy and work for you. And maybe that. Now in her case, she might have anticipated that, but she didn't show up another time. Susanna was out there and they put a combination box on it and she was able to get in anytime she needed to, inspections and all that, and never even had to come back for anything. So anyway, I will stop right here on this one. This language is a little different in the 4-pager. I'm just going to point out, in addition, seller acknowledges that an administrative fee may be paid to the broker who initiates a residential service contract. I haven't heard a residential service contract vendor promote their fees in years. But I was sitting in a class in January, this year, And the AHS representative that was helping or doing a class before mine said that they're offering $50 for this kind of an arrangement, 50 another for this one, and another one was 75 or 100. So they are paying, at least the AHS was, in January. I've got the documentation up in my desk in case anybody wants to see it. A fee, administrative fee to set that up. It's $70 or 50 or 100. Now, it's no problem. It's absolutely no problem if it says that the seller acknowledges that there will be an administrative fee. But if you're getting paid any kind of a fee for something like that, you've got to disclose it, and then it's fine. But if you don't disclose it, you have a problem with the real estate commission and some of the rules, and even the NAR, I think, code of ethics. So this one says that. When I get to the 4-pager, it does not say it. It acknowledges a residential service contract, but it does not indicate in there that there's an administrative fee paid. So if you're using that form, you probably ought to. And they're saying, I want to offer an AHS warranty on this. Then I would probably write in the special provisions the seller agrees to, just acknowledges that administrative fee may be paid as a result of our helping put together the residential service contract. So we're supposed to disclose that if we're going to be paid anything. So you might call whoever you're using and see, do you guys still pay something? Because I suspect maybe they're not. I have not heard. Used to be they'd come in all the time. So by the way, if you'll do this for us, and we have to fill out the refrigerator serial number and the washer and dryer serial number and the serial number, and they may, or at least maybe the brand of the kitchen stove and the hot water heater and the heating unit, and they want us to do something to earn that fee in recent years, in the last 10. Before that, you just called that 800 number, ordered it, and it showed up. It was $70. And it was all of them. So I haven't heard them promoting it. Made me think they quit doing it until I heard that, and then she's doing it at least. So I thought, well, maybe they are, and they're just not promoting it anymore for some reason, which doesn't make sense. So anyway, I call them and say, is there any kind of a fee? I'm not asking for one. I'm just saying I need to disclose it if there is.
So where do you disclose it?
Well, it's already disclosed here, but and I believe in the purchase contract, it's probably, when we get it, let's look and see, but I believe it's already in the purchase contract. It's just not in the 4-page listing agreement, the 4-pager that the real estate commission put out. And maybe they don't have it in there because they don't care until the purchase contract comes together. And at that point, maybe they say, well, now you need to disclose it because there actually is a purchase contract. So, all right, let's see, is there anything else here? I don't think we covered enough time there. Right at the very end of this thing, there's this waiver language is required because the Brokerage Relationship Act says that if you don't have this waiver language in the listing agreement and the purchase contract, you'd be obligated by law to continue marketing that property until it closed. Spend advertising, keep it active in the MLS, and keep it that way until it closed, unless you put this waiver in there which says seller waives the right to receive subsequent written bona fide offers for a transaction related to the property after acceptance of a contract by the seller. So here it basically says once they've got a contract on it, by putting this in the language, we're no longer obligated to keep advertising and keep it active, and we can now put it pending. But you couldn't even put it pending if that wasn't in there. Now, it's nothing that says that, hey, this is a little bit shaky. Let's leave it on the market and look for backups, or they got a house to sell, and that's standard for us to keep them active during that period and find another buyer that doesn't have a house to sell possible. All right, I've been through this. You guys can know what the blanks are. Now here's the third one. I'm not going to spend the second one. We'll just quickly fly through this. But here it's got some of the same language in it, but you see the list of stuff that stays is not there. And you've got a start and an ending date and the compensation and so on. There is one section of this that I like. a lot. So I'm just gonna scroll through this. This is the real estate commission listing form, 4-pager. So right now, the first primary difference is that the list of things that stay is not in there. I got a call the other day I get calls now from people that know I'm on that committee. And number G, 4G, if the purchaser of the property is a VA finance transaction, seller shall pay cost of a HUD-approved infestation report by a licensed terminating company. This listing agreement, which is the real estate commission's version, obligates the seller on this thing to pay the termite inspection. And for years, that's the problem, January, for 20 years. For years, in Oklahoma, the seller had to pay for that. But they no longer have to pay for it. I validated that, proven it. But the forms, some of them still say they do. So I think we've finally got the purchase contract fixed enough where it doesn't say that the VA buyer is obligated. But there are some.
Even on the VA loan,
Supplement.
on the non-allowables,
Yep. It
the
may say.
VA won't allow the buyer to pay.
Let's look at
That's what I
that.
was gonna ask.
Yeah,
I
let's,
think
I
even
think
on
the
the-
VA buyer now, exactly that yesterday. And I'm like, what?
Why do we
Yeah.
have this? Why do we have this?
Oh gosh, 'cause I just had one and.
because the real estate commission
Well, it's usually
The
that.
seller has.
created one that was different than
It'll
Oklahoma's.
come out at closing.
And believe me, in some offices, they don't use that other one. They just use the real estate commission version. They don't use the other one at all. Edmonds commonly, they're using just the real estate commission 4-pager because it's only 4 pages. It's just quicker to fill out. And I've studied it quite a bit because every time I go up there to teach contract and forms, I have to make sure I'm clear on what's the difference between that one and this one. Now, we were talking about the VA finance supplement.
Yeah.
Let's take a look at it. It's page 36. This is the new one. Page 36 is the most current version.
Because I know because I had some listings that buyers just switched from conventional to VA, and so we had to have the supplement signed because and do a new net sheet because the difference is they have to pay for the difference.
Yeah, I'm here to tell you, Andrew, that people think you have to pay for it. But the fact of the matter is VA does not say so.
Okay.
The lenders maybe do. And so let's look on the second page, page 37. And let's see what it actually says here. Cost, it's under item 4. Cost VA prohibits buyer from paying. In addition to any other costs required by the contract or this supplement, seller shall pay at the time of closing an amount to whatever for those closing costs which the buyer is prohibited from paying on a VA loan. It does not say now termite inspection or termite certificate. It used to. It used to say 2 or 3 things. I mean, it had the tax service fee, doc prep, and termite inspection used to all be where the veteran buyer couldn't pay them. Not true anymore. And I'm just trying to get the word out finally. And I've got a guy named TJ Courtney that works up in Edmond, can't come out with the Air Force. He is an expert on this kind of stuff, and he came into real estate and went to work in that office. He's the one that was in an Ignite class with me that said, I don't know that this is required. So he pulled the documentation up, and it isn't, not by VA. So the individual lenders and maybe even the individual mortgage processors might be stuck in 1983. And so that's where I would question it, Andrew. That's why I'm emphasizing this.
Yeah.
You drove all the way from North Oklahoma City. You got to get something out of this besides, but I mean, I made a note. Check with lender for anything prohibited. So now I've been down to Kyle's room and I asked him stuff, including, while we're at it here, what can the seller pay in terms of closing costs for my veteran buyer? I asked him that question about 4 months ago, specifically, just to hear what his answer would be. And for his company, the answer was, well, a maximum of 4% toward buyer closing cost plus up to 2% in discount point origination fees. Prior, the answer had just been up to 4%. But then he did at least acknowledge that the seller can pay 1% origination fee, 2 on top of the 4, and you can pay the 1% discount point, 2 on top of the 4. But that was his answer that day, and that day it was true that it wasn't required. So the answer on that is wide open. They can pay way more than that, the seller can. But it's customary and common in Oklahoma City metro area that we all basically are stuck on about a 4% figure. And reality is, if you do the contract expense sheets on a VA transaction, the buyer closing costs are generally about 4%, maybe a little less of the sales price. So that's all that exists if you don't have origination fee or discount points. If you just add them up, that expense sheet you got over there, you just take that buyer expense sheet and divide that figure by $200,000 the sample is, it's 3.8%. But there's no origination fee, there's no discount point. It does include a warranty, one of these service agreements. So that's all that actually exists as far as those are concerned. But they can actually pay the buyer's credit card off. And some other stuff they can actually do. I don't think I put it in here. I have an article on that. I don't think I have it laying here. But anyway, the point is, the customs of the area are still ruling regardless of this. This no longer says it. It did. But that 2017 version of that form, and I think that didn't change in 18 or this last year. It's still what it was the year before. Anyway, the bottom line is they're acknowledging there could be some prohibited costs, but your lenders could be requiring not VA. And let's just ask the lender, what do you require as far as prohibited costs, if any? But it was once upon a time and schedule. Buyer couldn't pay for the and schedule, $10. Couldn't pay for half the title company's closing fee, $120 or $150. Couldn't pay the termite inspection. Couldn't pay the and tax service fees. They are none of those true now, at least as far as VA is concerned. They were true once, and that's the problem. We still have people thinking that.
This 4-page form.
Oh God, there she goes. I recommended not using it, but she's going to start using it. Here is something about it I like. Let's just scroll through. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on details of this because it's a lot of similar language. There's your broker duties and responsibilities. That's required in there. That's why it's in there. But we flow down through here in this listing agreement. I'm up to page almost 4, and I circled item 20. And I like that language. It's not in the 7-pager. The seller and broker agree that broker in response to inquiries from buyers or cooperating brokers shall disclose with the seller's approval the existence of offers on the property. You're getting this in advance. When disclosure is authorized, broker shall also disclose whether offers were obtained by the listing licensee, another licensee of the listing firm, or by a cooperating broker. So this is in that form, and it gets an authorization right up front from the seller in writing, saying that if I have multiple offers or offers more than one, and somebody asks me, I have the written approval to tell somebody. Now, it's very important that it says with seller's approval. Now, this comes straight out of the NAR Code of Ethics. It's Article 1-15, actually. And so that's where the language comes from. But what we have going on in common practice is offers come, we get a listing, and the market just explodes, and here come the buyers. And now we've got 3 offers on it. And what is happening, I think, very often is the realtor saying, gosh, I'm going to have to let everybody know that We got several offers, so let's go ahead and get our highest and best on the table. We'll present them tomorrow at 5 o'clock. And let me just go ahead and send out a notice to everybody. Let's, you know, I've got multiple offers so you guys get your best offers on the table. We'll present it tomorrow at 5. That's not what's supposed to happen. There's nothing wrong with doing it. It's just that if you do it without the seller's approval, you wish you hadn't sometimes. Now, we just go to that last 3 pages. Let's just flip back there and look around at that. So you can see while I'm at it here, on that little multiple offer information for consideration by buyers, sellers, and real estate professionals. It's just the last 3 pages. I don't have a number. I figured you can find the last 3 pages. But let's look. This says to information for buyers. Okay, sellers have several ways to deal with multiple offers. Sellers can accept the best offer. They can inform all potential purchasers that other offers are on the table. They can counter one offer but put the others to the side. Or they can counter one offer and reject the others. So that's instruction to a buyer that these are some of the options that a seller has. And then it says, well, while the listing broker can offer suggestions and advice, decisions about how offer will be presented and dealt with are made by the seller, not by the listing broker. And so a minute ago when I described the listing broker is making the decision. And he's not a party to the transaction. So there are advantages and disadvantages to various negotiating strategies you can employ in multiple offer negotiations and so on. It gives them some discussion, instruction. Your buyer representative will explain the pros and cons of these and possibly offer and other negotiating strategies. The decision, however, is yours to make. In some cases, sellers may make other buyers aware that your offer is in hand. In some cases, seller may instruct their listing broker to disclose an offer to other buyers on their behalf. Listing brokers are required to follow lawful and ethical instructions. So that's buyer. Now let's look at the seller one. The next page back, on the next page back, is information to sellers. And so this is also information to realtors in this class. And so it's possible you may be faced with multiple competing offers to purchase your property. Your listing broker can explain various negotiating strategies for you to consider. For example, you can accept the best offer. So here's one of the things you say. I got 3 offers on the table. I can just accept one. That's one of the things the seller can do. Or you can inform all potential purchasers that other offers are on the table, invite them to make their best offer. That's another option. That's what we were talking about a minute ago, highest and best. You can counter one of those offers and put the others aside and wait for a decision on your counter offer, or you can counter one offer and reject the others. So there's a little conversation about the things. Now let's talk that through a little. If you make the decision as the realtor, I believe I'm not a party to the transaction, just the realtor. I'm going to send out multiple offer notice. We've got 3 offers on the table. I'm just going to let all of them know, hey, we've got 3 offers. Get your best offer. Item, check number 2, second option in this paper. And let's send them all out and have them get their best offer on the table, and we'll decide next tomorrow at 5 o'clock what we're going to do. Not even going to guarantee we'll take any of them, but we're going to at least decide what we're going to do. Now, if you do that as the realtor and do not get the seller's permission, and your best offer says, you know what? I'm not going to play that game. I'm out. Show me something else. Are you going to be glad at that moment you asked the seller, or you just took that on your own to do? And that's the problem. If you make the decision, you don't have the authority to make it, number one. And then you lose your best offer and you never get back to that with anything else. And you could lose them all. They all 3 could say, forget it, I don't believe them. I think that's just a ploy for getting me to raise my offer. I'm out too. You could lose them all 3. You could. And I remind myself of Rick. Piece of land over here is 5 acres. He wanted to buy some land, been on the market for a year and a half. Same price, never had a price correction. And he comes along and says, I believe I'm gonna make them an offer. They're bound to be desperate by now. So he didn't come in terribly low, but probably, I don't know, I can't remember how much low. He came in a little bit low. And I submitted. And the next morning, the realtor calls and says, well, we got another offer on the property. So I'm calling to let you know that, get your best offer on the table. I said, okay, that's pretty unusual. Been on the market a year and a half. We finally put something in, and now all of a sudden we got another offer, but I'll let him know I'm now just the messenger. So I called Rick, got another offer on the property. He said, that's a bunch of bull. I'm not going to be bidding against myself. They don't have another offer. They're just trying to get my offer up. I said, well, I have to assume they're telling the truth, but I can't prove it one way or the other. He said, why don't you just withdraw my offer? I don't think I'm even interested. I said, no, come on. Leave it on the table if it's the only one. Maybe they'll counter yours back and we can get some, because all they're saying, if it isn't true, is we want a little more. Let's just find out how much. Leave it on. Okay, fine. So we did. I don't know how many hours later it was. I think it was the next morning. Call Mr. Ward to let you know that we've sold the property to the other guy. I just wanted to let you know. I said, okay. I guess I'm the messenger again. So, but he was willing to pull his offer. If I had talked him into keeping it on the table, he would have just walked away. That could happen, and I just use the story to tell you it's happened to me. So don't put yourself in a position of deciding. Let's make sure the seller's approval. Seller lets you, authorizes you to do whatever you do. You got this piece of paper to read to decide. Here are we got 4 different choices here, Mr. Seller. You could just take one, or you could counter on one and see what they do and put the others aside and let everybody know, hey, we've counted on one of them. We'll get back with you if they won't get this together. Hang with me. Or you could send out a notice to all 3 of them and say, hey, get your highest and best offers on the table. And we're going to review them at 5 o'clock tomorrow, and we're not guaranteeing we're taking any of them, but we will at least look at them and give you some response back shortly after that. So that's perfectly fine. Just get the seller to authorize it so that if it happens that they lose all 3 because they're offended and don't want to bid against each other or bid against themselves or feel like it's some kind of a ploy, you can say, gosh, I'm sorry. I know I gave you all the options and you chose that one and it just didn't work out. I'll see what I can do to get somebody back. If it's that hot of a property, well, maybe tomorrow we'll sell it again. But ultimately, yeah, remember.
So if this isn't on our 7-pager, so what form would we copy and paste this to get their?
I believe you could copy and paste it and literally put it in the special provisions on the 7-pager. I mean, literally you could just go this one, copy it, paste it, because it's got us check 1, seller does or does not authorize broker to disclose the existence of offer on the property. I like this about that one. But that's the only thing about this one that I like that I don't have on the other one. This one doesn't have it.
It's weird that they have a different one.
Yeah. Sellers are aware that a residential service agreement can be purchased by the seller's property that will be transferable to the buyer. No cost of residential service is approximately this much and can be withheld from the seller's funds at closing. If the seller's decision is to purchase or not to purchase a residential service agreement, it's fine. There's nothing in there about that you might be compensated. So that's the difference between this one and that other one. There's nothing there on that subject. Other than that, there's not much else. What else, Marilyn? Anything else? She's good. She's reading this thing close. I like that. All right, I'm coming up on a break, I think. 5 minutes. I'm supposed to give a break every hour. But you guys, this is too fascinating to stop at an hour. If we go all the way to 10:30, then we'll be done at 1:45, Andrew. You could get back across that bridge before they close it before noon.
I know. See that Oakmar is offering. So I get caught up, so I was like, that one's at 1. So got time to grab lunch and.
Yeah. Latricia's rushing her. She's in one of those, I got to hurry up, get these done. Hers is end of May?
June.
End of June. Oh,
Yeah, that's
Oh,
mine.
God, that's forever.
That's what happens.
That's good. Let's get them all done.
My license expired. We have to turn all our credits in before that, though, right? So
Yeah, it needs to be in a little before that. All right, so we've covered the listing of forms, and we've covered the standard clauses. We touched on the VA transaction. This will give me a chance, since my computer was slow loading up, to put this expense sheet stuff back up on the screen. Hold that up here, right, and just kind of look at what it's got. Now, you guys have been doing this a while, second nature, don't even need the help sheet, but not everybody's in that place.
I could use a refresher because I've been spoiled by
You're right.
the Stewart app.
Yes. you-
Oh, are you sure? Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So
Now-
I really need to.
so, well, that's why I want to spend some time on it, because ultimately, all of this stuff keeps saying, in fact, this form, I got 4 minutes here, look here. This form is on every transaction, every purchase contract we have has this on it. And it's telling us that the buyer acknowledges and confirms the brokerage providing brokerage services to the buyer, describe their duties and responsibilities, and prior to the buyer signing the contract. And here we just decide, is it an in-house sale or a cross sale? If it's in-house, and we talked about that, Chris, you clear on it? In-house is Green Meadow, but Andrew and I could have a sale, and it's a cross sale, even though it's Keller Williams Elite. It's a cross sale because it's not the same company. If it's a cross sale, we don't check this. This is just checked if it's in-house. So, but I'm pointing out all this down here. Here's the deal. Buyer acknowledges and confirms the above, and further buyer acknowledges receipt of estimate of cost. There's Tricia's problem. She's gotten dependent upon that app. And if her phone breaks, she's in trouble. Yep. Updates and slow, can't do it. So ultimately, I'm gonna spend some time on that because the law, the Broker Relationship Act, which is the state law on this stuff, indicates that we have the obligation, it's mandatory and not waivable are the words, to make sure that whoever we're working with has an estimate of costs. And furthermore, is kept informed. We might as well touch on it again, Ginger. Those two are not optional for anybody. And occasionally I harp a little bit about our limited services guys because they sometimes are a little reluctant to estimate the expenses when we bring a purchase contract, because they're just sending us directly over to the seller, and we're negotiating everything eye to eye and face to face with that guy, and it's perfectly legal to do it. But they are not relieved of the responsibility of estimating the costs for those people by law. So I make sure we all understand that so that we can leverage that knowledge and try to encourage them to get it done so that we don't end up doing it. But both for the buyer and the seller, both, we need to know what this is. So that's the thing, Patricia, when you have the app, you plug in the sales price and a couple of dates and then it produces a number. And you're thrilled, oh my God, here's a number, here's what you're gonna need to bring or get at closing. And you show up at closing and actually it's about that, pretty close. But we don't know why the numbers are what they are. We don't know why is it why is that number. So we'll spend a little bit of time on it. But anyway, this is my best effort so far is to clarify this. I had Leslie, brand new, first buyer over the weekend, Saturday, she's showing houses. And she used the little thing, only mistake she made, she did it perfectly. First time, first buyer in her career. The only mistake she made was under title insurance, she used $745, and this was a $570,000 sale, not a $200,000 sale. And so the fee's a little higher than, what's that, $745, like $1,300. And so I put in there C chart, but she missed that part. Then she looked at the chart right after she sent it to the realtor. And, she said, I made a mistake. So I said, well, you didn't send that to them. You didn't send that estimate to them, so it's nothing Don't worry about it, just correct it and then send it to your buyer, correct it. So anyway, but she did it on a cash transaction, exactly right, without any help, except for that one mistake which she caught it on her own. I looked at it, I'm looking through it, she sent me that stuff and said, here, look it over. I'm flying down, looking at something, this looks good, looks good, looks good. I didn't even catch it. So, anyway, all right, 10:30, straight up. And this is a precise condo class. So we're gonna have to take a break at exactly 10:30. 10 minutes. 10 minutes, catch everything up. This way you don't have to look like you're praying, you're just actually texting. And I know it. Because people put it under the table and look like they're praying whenever they're texting during the class. If you're gonna pray, just do it right out in the open, okay? All right, just let me see if I can find my sheet here, I'll put it up there.
So that's between those two forms on those listings.
Yeah.
What other reason do you not like the shorter?
Well, it doesn't have all the
Just because-
indemnity, as many indemnity clauses in it.
Yeah.
Or clauses that
That's
protect us, that's the main difference.
It's just weird that they think they have to have it, you know?
Yeah.
All these forms.
Connect. Connected, secured, okay, now let's try it again. That's the second time this thing is disconnected from the internet. All right.
Oh, what's wrong with me? I am freezing.
It's freezing?
I am cold.
Is it cold here? We can turn it up and it's
I
not.
do, it's just me. I don't want you to turn it up for anybody, because of me.
Even Marilyn acts like she's really good.
Oh, God. She's dead.
Just walking down.
Oh, Joe. I don't think my hands are that cold.
Yeah, Marilyn walked away.
Whew.
It's a bit chilly.
Oh, well, day 3 of the workout. Wonder what's happening today. I'm like, I showed a house yesterday and the lady is a teacher. And when she told me she was a teacher, and I said, well, you look like you sunburned. And she said, oh, that wind. And I said, well, you think you're going to get anywhere? And she said,
They're not leaving until my husband's a teacher.
and I said, I tell you, and that's what I told him. I said, if y'all don't stay to the very end, I said, all of this is for nothing. I mean, if you're not gonna
Part
get
of the
something.
problem, I'm gonna tell you what's weighing a toll on some of them is because of, they put so many other things in place to make sure that the kids eat. But the reality is, it was never the school's responsibility to make sure the kids eat in the beginning. It's the parents, but that's just going to show extra responsibilities that the schools have taken on and providing, for the kids.
Well, you don't want to get, and that's what she
Well, no,
said.
yeah,
She
but I'm
was
just
saying,
saying, in reality, there's so many people that saying, well, how are they thinking, well, you know what?
it's your
It's your kid,
But that's where we have failed is, instead of making people take on responsibilities, I would have never, I can see people falling on hard times. I get it.
The legislators, they left yesterday. They left, and then they had told them, we're just not gonna return until 3:00, so you all may leave, but the teacher stayed yesterday. So at that point, when they left and made that statement, they'd already decided, oh, well, I guess we'll be back tomorrow because they're trying
But
to.
they're not gonna be back today until 3, right? I thought that's what I heard too.
They did the same thing. Well, I mean,
Where's your husband a teacher at?
he's a Green Pastures, Spencer.
It's just crazy.
He teaches elementary and then coaches high school. Coach basketball, they just want to send
Well, Marilyn, have you picked up any new information? Now, if it's perfectly good if you didn't, because if it's not, it's none of it new, then you're beginning to internalize and know stuff.
Yes.
And that's useful, just for you to know, gosh, I have not run across much in new information. Because ultimately, that's my goal, is to get you bored with this so that you know it.
What is the process, because I'm so worried about this appraisal coming in low because they had offered 5,000 more than to roll in their closing. So what, if it does come in low, what is the process? I mean, do the buyer's agent just send us something saying, came in low and we're gonna offer this, or?
Yeah,
Or what?
what you established whenever that appraisal comes in is the maximum loan amount. So that's all you've done. That's what that's for, is to do two things: to see if the house qualifies for financing to start with, and two, how much. So what the appraisal, if it came in low, I'm not so sure it will, but I understand that if worry helps, kick it up a notch.
I don't think I could pick it up that much.
I can tell you've got stress in your eyes over it, and it hadn't happened. But that's, 9% of everything that we worry about doesn't happen. But let's say it did. Let's say it did. It came in 5,000 low because we've added some on. What we've done, as I said, is establish this is the maximum loan amount. So the buyer could pay the extra, probably won't. Yeah,
Oh, okay.
he can pay cash difference. He could pay the cash difference. There's no law says he can't, but that would be one solution.
Okay.
Now, he probably can't
Yeah.
because he doesn't have the funds to do it.
Wanted to roll it in the first place.
That's right. That's the logic of what you said. Just enough to say to me, he probably can't do it because he wouldn't have rolled it in the first place. You're right. So, but the point is he can. And typically the buyers, the selling agent and the buyer, are fairly thrilled that it came in low, because if they can buy it for that, it's $25 a month less. Well, seller's not happy about that because he didn't put the buyer in a position of not having the money to close with the closing costs. That's the buyer's personal problem, not the seller's. But he's willing to try to help, and so that's what we've done, stepped in, try to help him. The seller can accept it. You just say, well, that's all it's going to bring. That's all the money there is. And what are the odds of me finding another buyer that doesn't need help with closing costs in my price point and location? And so if he's in a place where that's the kind of buyer you're attracting and the price point you're attracting, you're just going to cross that bridge eventually again. Even if you say, well, I'm not doing it. Well, the marketplace now is established kind of what the value is, and then it just comes down to whether you can find another buyer that doesn't need that much in closing cost or any. So it's up to that. You're the messenger then to say, well, here's what it came in at. Are you willing to sell it and pay the closing cost at this? Because this is what the comparables say. In fact, it proves the point that I was right about the value in the first place. We priced it at that other figure for a reason, using comparables, which this appraiser did use, and that in the end proved us right. Hate being right, but in being right, we were back to where we thought we should price it at to start with, but we have a buyer that needs help with these closing costs, and you can't buy it any other way. The question then is, do we think, what are the odds that we find another buyer that will pay this price and not ask you for closing costs? Because that's the only way you're going to come out any better. And so then what do you want to do? I'm the messenger. And so the solution can be, well, we split the difference. Maybe if the buyer's got some earnest money up and you're paying $5,000, which is all the closing costs. Well, at least the earnest money is some evidence that they have some money. So they could pay at least that much of their closing cost to start with. They could just step up and say, earnest money's 1,000 or whatever it is. Well, let's apply that. Since you've already got it, we already have it in hand. Apply that to this 5,000, and we'll pay 4,000. You pay 1,000, and we'll just make this deal work. So, I mean, that's where my mind would go. What do they already demonstrate they put up? So how much is the earnest money?
$1,000.
All right. I knew it could be something. It's going to be somewhere in that ballpark because of the sales price. So ultimately, they have 1,000 that they could pay. We have evidence of it. It's in hand. So that's the other thing. So you work out the difference. But at the end of the day, it is what it is. And you're just basically going back to your seller and saying, here's what the appraisal came in at. That's your argument, is that if it came in 5,000 low, it may come in 3,000 low. In which case you could say, gosh, this is kind of fortunate because ultimately I undervalued it just a little bit. This appraiser was a little bit more liberal than I was in my initial assessment of it. He's giving us 3,000 more than we thought we could get in the first place. So really the problem is only about a $2,000 issue, and the buyer's got 1,000 of it up already. So maybe we can make this work and get the buyer to use theirs or not. We may not be able to, but at the end of the day, let's negotiate the difference, and the buyer can pay the difference. Probably won't, can't. Seller can accept what it is and just move on. Or they can find some ground in the middle and work it out. But it's in the seller's best interest most of the time, in my opinion, to work it out, because he just might end up right back here again, only 60 or 90 days later, and his holding costs, taxes, all that stuff are not free. He gets to pay the tax bill for that extra time. He gets to pay the insurance bill on something he doesn't need or want for the extra time. Is the house vacant, or is he living in it? He's living in it. So at least he's got a place to live, and he would be paying for something else somewhere else if he was.
Well, in fact, you're buying another house that already,
So they've already made
got
it.
the appraisal on the other house, everything's ready to go.
Is it contingent on this one selling?
Mm-mm.
All right. So he could put himself in the position of having double house payments real easily. And in that moment, a couple thousand, $2,500, $3,000 could be gone in no time by holding two. So that's the conversation you have with him if that happens. So it hasn't happened, probably won't happen. You'll forget this. But if it does happen, you got a little bit of preparation for how to deal with it.
How do you take that $1,000 from earnest money and put it towards closing?
You just create an addendum or a supplement, but an addendum probably that says the terms of the purchase will be sales price this, buyer to pay $1,000 toward their own buyer closing costs, seller to pay up to $4,000 in closing costs instead of $5,000, and just create a separate document that's blank. We got some in this paperwork. And the supplement and the addendums are attached to the purchase contract and become the revised terms. Now, it's been 12 minutes, but we got to, so let's just, let me continue this a little. What could happen is that you could say, I don't accept this. I believe I've got comparables that would justify more than this. So you could basically say, I'm going to argue a little with the appraiser. I'm going to provide him comparables that say, here's what we use to justify our figure, and see if he'll revise his number.
Yeah, I've already seen.
So you've done all you can do probably at this point.
On comps, do you normally take that low one out?
Don't know.
Because I mean, there's two in the neighborhood and one sold for ungodly low. And so that's what's skewing the whole thing.
Yeah, but if that was a distressed situation or some kind of a person that had a fire sale, that's not fair to this seller who doesn't have a distressed or fire sale scenario.
Okay.
So that's what.
Cash, was it? Yeah,
All right.
that could have been a lot.
But that does happen from time to time. All right, now I want to pull up what I had handy. Andrew, this is something you might have over. Chuck probably hands you stuff like this on a regular basis over there. But this is just my little formulas page. This is for Christy, maybe Lisa a little bit. It basically says that, hey, when I'm doing my expense sheets, What do I put in these blanks? Or, better yet, how do I figure it? So I've created this little formulas for buyers and sellers sheet that's just in your stuff.
Is it?
Yeah, it's in the little,
So your
It's
expense
It's in
sheet.
on, okay.
yeah, there you go, right there. Now, I created this because it's common not to be sure, especially the private mortgage insurance calculations, where I got Patricia over here using the app, and I know she don't know how she's getting that number, but the machine's doing it for her. But here, interest from the end of the month from the closing date to the end of the month. That's one of your calculations on your expense sheet. And so we'll look at it here in a second, just to look at it, but this is an example. How would you figure that? So this is a scenario where you've got an interest rate of 3 3/4%. So we just take the 109, the loan amount, which was conventional. One of the loan amounts on these samples is 190,000, which is is a 95% conventional loan on a $200,000 deal. And so you would take 190,000 or whatever the loan amount itself is, times the interest rate, 3.75 or 4, whatever it is, and you get an annual amount of interest, $7,125 worth of annual interest. That's how much you pay the whole year of interest. And you divide that by, I just say 365 days. Because that's how many days in most years. If you have a leap year, it's not that big a deal. And we are not having a leap year, so don't worry about it. We're past February 28th already. So that means it's $19.52 a day. And you're closing on this case, the scenario that says November 17th. Any year. And so that's 14 days. November's got 30 days every year. So you got 14 days worth of interest to calculate. So it's $19.52 times the 14 days, and that's $273.29. That's what goes in that blank. And every one of your expense sheets has got that blank in it. Now,
But it will change with the interest rate.
yeah, it does change with the interest rate. Do you divide it by 12, and how do you do it? Do you do the 365 run? Because there's
I do the 365.
yeah, 365. Just saves you another set of calculations. You just divide it by the number of days in a year. Now, the buyer's insurance calculation. Right now, Latricia's app is using this formula essentially. It's saying we don't know what the insurance premium is going to be.
Oh, it allows me to plug it in. I can override certain.
Okay, so you can put it in if you know what it is. But if you don't put one in, the default on Chicago Title and Stewart's, I believe too, is 1.5% of the sales price. Because in the old days, we had a little rate chart. We just looked up the rate chart of the sales price, and that's how much the dang insurance was, or really close to it, unless they had extra guns or jewelry or something. But if they were just getting standard coverage and a standard deductible, it was just right in front of your eyes. But I had Michael Sohn come in, and part of your material, the very back page, is my notes on Michael Sohn, who's an insurance guy, has come into our focus group on Thursday afternoon, and we talked. He just sat in the chair just like the rest of us and informed us. And so I put his rule of thumb for calculating the average score, average credit score on a roof of that's an average condition would be 1.5% of the sales price. He says buyer's insurance calculations is based on credit score and roof age. So if you don't know what their credit score is, how can you calculate it? If you don't know what the age of the roof is, how can you calculate it? Now you can look up on the printout the age of the roof. Generally, it is disclosed in the disclosure forms. But anyway, you just take whatever the sales price is times 1.5%. That's $3,000 divided by 12, and $250 a month is what your monthly insurance premium would be on a $200,000 sale, give or take. Now, I always say, if you got a lot of guns, you got a lot of jewelry, you gotta have extra coverage, this is gonna be, this may be a little low. But just remember two things, their credit score and the age of the roof are what dictate that figure. And if you don't know either one of those, just use 1.5 and it's probably gonna be close enough. It's gonna get in the ballpark. It is an estimate. In fact, when I put $273.29, I'm not putting that on my form. I'm gonna round it to the next dollar or $5 bill or something. I'm not gonna put the cents in ever because I wanna demonstrate to a judge, if nobody else, this is an estimate.
I circled this as an estimate.
And you circle at the top right there on the top of it. It's an estimate. So anyway, this is that calculation, how you would arrive at what would you put in the insurance blank. We'll get to the blanks in a minute. Tax proration, same thing. What's the annual tax bill? You should know that. You can pull that up in your tax records and know what last year's tax bill was. Does not mean that's this year's. In my house, this year's is always more than last year's. But they're basing it on last year's, and that's what all the calculations are based on. So what were last year's tax bill divided by 12 months, it's $210 a month. And so they're collecting the insurance in advance. The full policy. So it's $250 times 12. And then they're collecting another 3 months worth to set in the escrow account. And that's what goes in there. So I got everybody following me, but I got a couple of clouded over eyes here. I'm working on it.
So you need your insurance 15 months, or is it 14?
Before the 12 to 15, be 15 months basically. We used to say 14.
Those 14 months on their app.
Yeah, because they're putting 2 months in. I'm saying pad it one, because ultimately, if you don't need it, they're not unhappy that you're bringing a little less to closing than you told them. So I'm saying put 3, and in fact, I think the expense sheet says 3. What page is the expense sheet on? Expense sheets 39 and 40. We might as well look at them.
This is pretty much.
Let's just let's see. It's 39 to sell one of viruses. 39 to sell one. So we're talking, normally that would be a buyer, but on the seller one, right at the top of the seller one, it says tax proration, the very top line. So that's where you're trying, that's the first thing you're figuring, is how much of this is the seller going to pay. Right now it's the 4th day of April. He will pay all the way up to the 4th day of April. They're going to prorate that $2,500 divided by 365 days up to the 4th day of April, and the buyer's going to take it from there. And they'll take that month, that group, that amount of money from the seller's proceeds, move it right over to the buyer's credits, and give him the credit for it. And then when the bill comes due at the end of the year, he's got what the seller's portion is in his escrow account and what he put in throughout the rest of that year. And that's how it gets paid.
So for a buyer, it's really cheaper to purchase at the end of the year. Closer to the end of the year when you're coming.
Well, they're still only going to collect for the buyer on the tax bill 3 months, one way or the other. They're going to collect 3 months worth of that tax bill, or 2 to 3. What are they for? Why? A couple of reasons. One is, if you've ever closed one, you know that there is no payment for a month. So if you close the 17th of November, you don't have a payment till February 1st, because they're collecting the interest from the 17th to the 31st of December at closing. I mean November. I'm wrong. I'm not February, January. So let me get it straight. 17th to the 30th of November, they collect that at closing. That's that interest adjustment up here. And then you don't have a payment for December then. The buyer does not have a payment in December. So one of the reasons they have to put a month's worth in the escrow account is because they didn't make a payment 1 month right up front. And the reason they don't make a payment right up front is because interest cannot be charged or collected for until the money was used. So this is Vivian Darnell, 1977 pre-licensing class, where she said, Don, don't ever forget. Don't ever forget, even if you're real estate 40 years, that interest is paid in arrears and taxes are paid in advance. And so, or not taxes in arrears. Insurance is paid in advance. You pay insurance ahead of using it, but you pay the tax bill after you live there, and you pay the interest after you use the money. So that's why you don't have a payment that first 30 days, is because you haven't used the money yet. They collected the 14 days worth at the closing table because you had a portion of a month left. That's why we have a lot of folks running over here at Stewart Title the last day of the month, wanting to close, because it's $19.52 a day cheaper to close the last day than it is any other day of the month. Because they're collecting from the 15th to the end of the month. You got to take 15 days or whatever it is times 1942. But if you close that last day, you just got $19 for that last day. And that's why people tend to want to close, but that's the worst day to close a house. The worst day you can choose to close a house is the last day of the month. Because a whole bunch of people are trying to do that at the same time. You get terrible service, not because they're bad. They're just double booked all day long. And all you got to do is have me show up with my buyer at 9 o'clock, the first closing, and be a little late. And everybody's late the rest of the day. And, you know, and the closers are fried a little bit because they're behind. And people are out in the lobby waiting around. So, I mean, that's why I just say, my God, move it up a week. Pay 5 days or something, but I mean, you get a lot better service. Then the PMI, this is the one right here that gets most people. How do I figure that? Well, good God, you got to know how if you're going to do it manually. And this is a little sample. Private mortgage insurance is on the conventional loan. FHA's got mutual mortgage insurance. It's handled similarly, but not exactly the same. So conventional loans just have a private mortgage insurance premium. It's included in the payment. They don't have anything up front. It's just in the monthly payment. So here's how you do it. Based on the loan amount, I would take 0.91% divided by 12. So whatever your loan amount is, $190,000 times 0.91%, $1,729. Take that figure divided by 12, and you get $144.08 a month, which is the private and mortgage insurance premium every month until the conventional loan drops under 80%. So it's a pretty good sized piece of the payment.
8% of the loan amount or 8% of the?
80% of the value is the loan amount is 80% of the sale of the value of the house. Now, it can be the sales price, but ultimately, really, the value.
If you like have it, like do a refi, then it can change.
Yeah, it could. But the point is this: it is not of the sales price, because if that house goes up in value and you can get an appraisal and prove it in a year, you bought this thing. It was a heck of a deal. You bought it for 15% of value. You paid it down 5%, and you went and got an appraisal and said, Mr. Lindell, look here. I only owe 79% of what this appraisal says my house is worth. You can drop that $144 out of your payment as soon as that happens. Now, that can happen because of 3% appreciation over a period of time sooner than you think. If you don't let the lender know I'm at 80%, they'll just sit back and wait till it's 80% of the original sales price, and then they'll notify and say, congratulations, you're now low enough where we're not charging you any mortgage insurance.
Something to remember.
Yeah, it is, because it does not take that long, and if you
I
don't,
have found that a lot of appraisers, when they go out for the purchase, they won't do an actual appraisal of what the value is. They'll just make sure that it's with the loan amount, enough of what the loan amount is.
That's on here.
well, here's the deal. Let's talk about that a little bit. See how this works, Andrew? The class drives the conversation.
That's
We can
That's a perfect question, because I just had a house that it was a resale that was built in 2016, and I mean the comp range was anywhere from on the low at 325 up to, you know, in the 340s, and we sold it at 334.9, and they just said the appraisal came in right at value, and so that's where
Here, let's
You're
talk
not
about
good.
why.
Your hair out, and you know it was actually worth way more than this.
Yes.
Well, here's the deal. My experience is that if it's worth way more, they will appraise it a little higher than the sales price, but not much. What they have got to do is basically, with an underwriter, is just validate that we have enough value to cover what this guy needs for his loan. Like I said with Marilyn at the break, all that appraisal is for is to see, number one, is this thing in good enough condition to merit being a collateral for somebody to make a loan on? Number one, good enough condition. Is it safe, sanitary, and habitable? Number two, is it how much should we loan on this before we're taking too much risk to make the loan? So they're basically establishing that the buyer's got to put a certain amount of money down. But those two things are the only reason the appraiser is out there, is to establish those two things. Is it sufficient enough collateral in terms of, is it going to fall down in a year? We're making a 30-year loan on this thing. If it falls down, the guy advertised it won't last long, and it didn't. Fell down in year two, well, then now they don't have any collateral. It's gone. They got a $200,000 loan against something that's just dirt. So that's what they're preventing, is they're going out, and then they're requiring sometimes some paint and this and that and the other to make sure it stands for 30 or however long the loan's going to be in place. But the appraiser is basically just going to, his target generally, that's why it comes back at what the sales price was often, is because it's enough to justify what the buyer needs, not necessarily altogether what it's worth. If you got a John Doe appraisal and there was no buyer, it might come in a little higher because he could use, comparables that might justify that. But at the end of the day, he understands, he will get a copy of the contract. He knows what it sold for. He also will know what the terms were, whether they closing costs paid or not. So that's where he's starting from. He's starting from.
Why does it matter if the closing cost, who paid what? For them to determine the value on a.
Well, let's just see.
Like, it's none of your business. I hate when they call me asking me that.
Well, but it's being financed in. so that-
Well, here's the deal. Let me ask you this. If I were selling you a house for $100,000 and I would carry the note with no interest for the whole 30 years, or you pay me cash and pay me $95,000, which of those two are you most interested in?
The cash.
Okay, I'll take it. Because I don't have to wait for 30 years to get my money.
Yeah,
But the terms matter. That's my point, maybe a valid illustration. I would rather borrow money at no interest than to have to come up with cash, especially if I can't. So the terms, let's just make it this way. $100,000 house, no interest, nothing, no origination, nothing. I'm just going to carry the loan, no down payment. Or a $100,000 house, you got to put 5% down, you're going to have to pay me 5% interest. Which of those two are you most interested in?
Say it again.
100,000, no interest, 30 years, no origination, no down payment. Or 100,000, same sales price. But you got to put 5% down, so you got to give me 5,000 up front down payment, and you need to pay me 4% interest also.
I mean, as the buyer, I'm really interested in the other.
Yeah, why?
Because it's going to save you money.
Oh, okay. Maybe that makes my point here
What
with your
does that
question.
change? I'm still, it
The
doesn't change
appraisal.
the value of the house though.
No, but the terms maybe dictate the appeal of the house. The terms, are part of it. So if they sell it, let's just take it this way. Seller sold this house for $100,000, but he paid $5,000 in closing costs. Or a seller sold for $95,000 and didn't. Which is the better deal for the seller?
Same thing, same outcome.
That's right. So if the thing sold for $100,000 and they paid the closing cost, it's the same thing as if you sold for $95,000 and didn't. And so that's why they're asking, did they or not? Because the value proposition maybe is different. I understand where you're coming from. You're saying it should just be worth what it's worth. I agree. It should just be what it is worth, what it's worth. But the terms dictate to me some of what it's worth. If I don't have to pay interest, or if I didn't have to pay the closing costs, doesn't mean the property's worth less. But the value proposition for the buyer is better when the seller said, I'll pay him, versus if he didn't.
So that goes to prove one of my points that I've had a while back, that sellers and the owners in a neighborhood can ultimately drive their own value of their properties if they stand their ground, if they're gonna let it go for.
Yeah, that's right. And all it takes, and you got that scenario yourself over there where she's saying, we got one guy in the area that had a fire sale for some reason, which meant he had to get out of there fast. He discounted the price deep so he could, and now it's affecting them long run. And it's 6 months it'll affect them, because the appraisers could use that comparable for 6 months.
Oh, mine go back a year. This appraiser goes back a year.
Yeah, so if he couldn't find anything 6 months up, so he had to go back a year to find anything, and then he did. And the underwriters will do it. So the person that the appraiser is answering to is an underwriter at some point that's going to sign off on the whole deal. He's going to say, this buyer looks like they're qualified, and the house looks like it's qualified, and I'm signing off approved. But he's going to have to make sure that what he puts together is defendable, because the underwriter ultimately is going to look at the comparables and see how old they are, how close they are, how comparable it is. And here's what they should be doing, is looking to see if your guy is paying $5,000 in closing costs, find a comparable nearby that sold, that was the same size house, same age, where that seller paid $5,000 in closing costs, and that's comparable. Now we've got a comparable. But if you can't find any comparables where the guy paid closing costs, there maybe is some kind of an adjustment for the fact that this one did or didn't. So, but comparable would be same terms, same kind of property. And that's why they're calling to ask, is it the same terms or not? And we don't always put it in the MLS system. There's a place for it that says seller paid this much in closing costs, and there's a blank. And if we know what it is, we're probably supposed to be putting it in there, so they don't have to call us. But if we don't put it in there, one way or the other, then I don't know if that's a required field. Is that where it says yes or no?
No, we don't have to put it in.
You don't have to put it in, so it's optional whether we have. If it was required, we had to put yes or no. They would know yes or no that there was some concessions or not. But I appreciate it. I've made the argument many times myself.
But there is a place for us to put the amount.
Yeah.
But it's not like it's required.
It's not required, so people don't put it in. That means then the
But they will
appraisers are calling and saying, well, were there or did there? I'm using yours as a comparable, yes or no, and if so, how much? And I don't know, you can say it's none of your business, I guess, and then they can.
In fact, I got
You got that?
a deal this morning from an appraiser.
Yeah, but that's why they're asking, long story. Anyway, now, I'm gonna show you here what Kyle, it just about 2 months ago, I guess, on the subject of the private mortgage insurance premium. What do we use? It's kind of like the insurance bill. We don't know the age of the roof, we don't know the credit score. What do we use? And you remember on that previous page, I used 0.91 as the amount for how I figured the premium. But Kyle's telling me, well, that's for somebody that's got a credit score under 740, and they're putting down 95% minimum down payment. So what the apps are calculating, and what I'm proposing, if you don't know, is let's just calculate the worst case scenario, and if it's better than that, you're not going to be upset. But let's look at the difference. If your credit score is above 740 and you put 95% down, 5% down, it's a difference between 0.91 and 0.63%. It's in terms of the real number, instead of 144, it's like not quite half, but it's almost half of that. And all the differences is the guy's got a 740 plus score. And then he's putting more money down. He's putting 10% down. He's got an under 740 score 0.73. But if he's putting 10% down and he's got a score over 740, it's going to be less than half of the 0.91 in terms of what they're going to put in his calculation. So anyway, those are the breakdowns of what Kyle's estimates were just 2 months ago. So I put them in there because if you guys have got a guy you know his credit score is above 740, he's told you. Or you know he's putting 10 or 15% down, then your calculation can be adjusted and his payment's going to be a lot less than what you would say otherwise. Because in this case, he's putting 10% down and it's all that, it's going to just default to 0.91% on the app. And it's no problem because you're going to get to the closing table and the payment's going to be $60 less than you told him it would be. Nobody gets upset with that, but it doesn't look like we know what we're doing too much when it's that far off. So I'd like for the numbers to be pretty close to what we actually come out with. And VA's got a funding fee. It works similarly as far as how you calculate it. But anyway, it's generally 2.15% for a veteran that's never used his VA eligibility. You're a buyer on that house. If he's never bought a VA house before, his VA funding fee will be 2.15% of the sales of the loan amount, which is usually the sales price on the VA. So $4,300, it would be added into the base loan amount. It's getting a VA loan for $200 because that's the sales price, and the funding fee if he's never used his VA benefits before is 2.15%. That's $4,300 that gets added on to the loan amount. So when you're calculating the guy's payment, if you don't calculate that in, you're missing $4,300 of what he's paying interest on. So now it's a $204,300 loan amount. We do our payments. So I've got all that. Let me go to this other little page. Come on back, down. Okay, let's see where I can find it. Is it here? Is it here? Yes. Don't mind me, I'm talking to myself. Right here, though, is that little sheet. So I'm going to try to make a little sense out of. So this ought to be boring to you, huh? Should be. But did you know the difference in the credit score or the loan amount in the PMI calculation was that much different?
No, I didn't realize it was that much difference.
Even the 20-year veterans learn things occasionally here in this room. Until they're bored, that's what I say, if I here's where you're going, Crystal, get completely bored to death. That's the goal. Because if you get there, you know this stuff. You can teach it. Now, look at the complicated mess I made out of this. But I just went through that other thing so I can show you this a little bit just to see what you've got in your hands here.
Okay, before you go on and I forget, I have a question.
Yes.
Or just clarification. On the PMI.
Yep.
This is the charges that they're charging for the loan. But do they all drop off at 8%?
No,
When it's,
just convention.
okay.
Because
FHA stays
FHA does not
forever.
drop off.
Okay, FHA stays forever? Okay, because I thought something was 5 years. I thought there was
Well, once upon a time. Yes, that's the affliction we have, is that once upon a time there was a period of time FHA where it did drop off at a certain point, not 5 years, it was longer than that. But to now, as of the last downturn, 2008, they changed the rules, trying to recover financially, the financial markets, and that's when it went to forever on FHA. And the VA funding fee is just on top, and it's for the life of the loan too. You can start there and it never drops. There's no monthly on the VA. It's just they add that in up front, and you just borrow that extra $4,300. But let's look here. See if here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to try to explain what this is and how you can use it. Because Latricia, you need it. Lisa could use the review. She said this is complicated to her. She sold houses already. Oh, Christy.
Well, I had it all, I had it all out in the beginning, and then when I got started using that app, I
Yeah, and that's what happens.
don't use it now.
Now, you don't use it, you lose it. That's why I hand you this thing, because you can take it with you. And I just love you to keep this with you, especially if you're working through this. Then take that darn app and check yourself and see if it's in the ballpark somewhere. Here, let me tell you on the Chicago Title app. Reality is, if you're using it for a buyer, my practice on the FHA or all the financing on buyer side of it, it's underestimated quite a bit.
That's bad.
Not just a little, $1,000 or more on the buyer. Because it's not adding in, doesn't know if you got a warranty or not sometimes, or you can set it up if you do it, but if you're just using the default that loads on your phone, it's not adding stuff in. That's not adding inspections in, it's not adding warranty in or service agreements in, so it's underestimating. Those right there are $700 or $800, just those two. So it's, but on the seller side, it's nailing it. It's nailing it on the seller side, and there's not much room to screw that up. It's just, here are the normal expenses, and if you don't screw up what the payoff is, it'll be right. And you can use it, check your seller expense sheet, and if it's very much different than that, you made a mistake probably. But the buyer one, if you do this and then you check it with your app, I don't know about Stewart's, I'm not as familiar with it, but I know what you got with titles. It will show that you're estimating higher manually than you are on that app, on that one, and that's if you just take the default one that lands on your phone, you go get it off the App Store, because it comes with a certain set of default settings that you can change, but if you don't change them. So let's look and see if let me see if I can clear this up. Andrew, I hope maybe this will help you a little bit somehow. You got him and Dad working together over there. Surely between the two of you get this stuff right.
Yeah, maybe.
Sure, maybe. Oh my God, maybe. But I hadn't been in real estate over a year yet, so I mean, there's room for improvement maybe. Sample estimate of buyer cost. Sample. I pretended I'm selling a $200,000 property. And I've tried on this thing to create or give you information for conventional, VA, and FHA all at the same time. I got a frown out of Lisa over here, so that's how it's working so far. But look here. I've added all these blanks in here. That makes the point. When you go on to .loop and you click up there under add, you can add blanks and text blocks and signature places and all kinds of stuff to this thing. Now, sales price on a $200,000 sale if it was VA. That would be generally the sales price. I mean, the loan amount. Understand? They're getting 100% loan. So here I'm just saying $200,000 is sales price, but I know beside that, if it's a VA transaction, this is probably the loan amount. Because one reason I go VA is because there's no down payment. Okay? But what about if I'm going conventional or FHA? Well, that's what I put in here. I said, okay, conventional, minimum of 5% down. So if you have a $200,000 sale, 5% of 200 is $10,000. That is your down payment minimum on conventional. So this is just minimum, but the FHA loan amount's different. So I've got them both in there. Your VA loan amount, your conventional minimum loan amount, your FHA.
No, there's some 100%
Minimum
conventional.
They claim there are, but nobody in Oklahoma would give me one. If you find somebody that will give me 100% conventional loan, get me their name, because I'm going to go ahead and change that. But until I find somebody, they all say they will, but nobody will do it. I want somebody to do it. Go over here and talk to Kyle, and by God, just laugh you right out of the room with 100% conventional. Now, you can get 100% loan, just get down payment assistance, and there's other ways to go about this. Go FHA, get down payment assistance from the Oklahoma Housing Finance Agency or other. That's one of the main ones, and you can literally get them in without any money. But it's still, there is a down payment involved. But I've heard that for 2 or 3 years.
Well, with Wioki, they're the ones that keep saying that.
Yeah.
So I don't.
Let's see, let's prove it. I want you to do one.
Show me.
And what's the interest?
Well, I don't have the credit to do it. They want you to pretty much have like a 7.
Yeah, I was supposed to say, I mean, you gotta have
40 or something.
750 credit score or something that you gotta have, you know, I mean, it's literally letter perfect. Nobody exists like the terms they're saying you have to get one. Anyway, I'm not gonna set you up on samples of something that you probably can't even get, or at least most people can't. So is this making sense so far? I got that blank, sales price. You shouldn't be too confused with that. Loan amounts, that's where confusion can begin. But FHA minimum down payment is 3.5%. Conventional is 5% minimum, unless you find Lucretia's guy. Anyway, the point is there's a down payment, which means you take the 200,000 minus whatever the down payment is, and that's your loan amount. If you're going to ever get these figures right over here, which is your payment, you got to get this right. And most people will have any trouble here, and most are pretty good with this. It's when we get into the mortgage insurance and the funding fees and the private mortgage insurance figures that it gets us messed up. So I'm going to try to go slow. Mortgage insurance premium, that's what MIP is FHA's PMI, you could say. It's just, I got, you know, private mortgage insurance is just covering the lender in case they default. That's all it's for. That $144 long ago is nothing for the buyer or the seller. That's just insuring the lender that if these guys don't make the payments, they got an insurance policy that will insure them that they don't lose it all. It will ensure that they get most of that loan amount back. FHA, so conventional, you just have that one figure, which is just part of the payment. Conventional. No upfront, just part of the payment. FHA, not the same. So let's see, FHA will never let their mortgage insurance premium fall off, and they charge way more. Because they charge some upfront and monthly. So I'm trying to get you connected. Frown little and FHA. I like FHA. It's a lower down payment, but there's some problems with it, and that's because they're charging some upfront figures and they're charging monthly figures. So anyway, your FHA mortgage insurance premium, if you take 1.75% of your loan amount, you get $3,378, which is added into your on top of your loan. So you've got the base loan amount, which is that you put 3.5% down, and you end up with $193,000 loan amount on 200. Plus this upfront mortgage insurance premium. So it's that figure plus that figure equals this figure. So that's what you got to know to get the payment right.
Is that 1.75%, is that just standard, or does that ever change?
Standard. Never changes, or at least it hadn't changed a long time.
So it's added into the one.
Added to the loan amount. That's why if you don't add it in, you're miscalculating this figure over here, but $3,400 loan or amount of money that you're not charging them for it. And that's how your thing will be off. So $3,000 times 5, that's going to be $15 a month off.
Yeah, they could pay that up front
They could
if
pay
they
that
had
up
the cash,
Yeah.
and then just pay the monthly.
Yeah.
But
Have you ever had anybody do it?
No.
No.
So I'm
Never
starting to
4
look
years
at
of
this
buying.
FHA loans kind of like buy here, pay here lots.
Yep. Kind of like that. So that's what I want you. You're getting it, Patricia. The point being, it's expensive to go FHA, even though the down payment's less. You don't have. It doesn't cost you quite as much to get in. And that, but there is a lot involved. You'll see how much. Because I'm adding $3,400 almost into their base loan amount right up front. and I'm getting it with that 1.75%, it doesn't change. It's just always that much upfront on FHA. Now, you'll notice here, conventional, there's no upfront. It's the only one that doesn't have anything upfront. It's still $190,000. When I get down here, I'm going to figure my payments. There's no upfront. VA has got what? That VA funding fee. And it's 2.15%, I told you. Good grief. Yeah, that's the guys that calling me and saying that you need this gadget because in case you fall down and can't get up, you need to be able to hit the button. And that's who that is usually. All right, now, so my loan amount here stayed the same. There's nothing up front. FHA, there is up front. And VA, there is up front. We got a base loan amount of $200 plus our 2.15%, which is $4,300. And now we're ending up with a $204,300 amount that we got to calculate the payment on. So I go through all this. Up until I started doing this, nobody had anything on the top of these dang, they call them cheat sheets. I don't have any cheat sheets, they're just help sheets. Help sheets, we don't cheat here. But we do get help. We needed it. This over here needs help. Her eyes are starting to clear a little, Christy. Yours are not.
So just to clarify.
Yes.
It's been a long time since I've done this.
Yes.
On FHA.
Yeah.
There's an upfront funding fee and there's a monthly fee. Yes.
Yep.
Wow.
Both. So that's how I get you to remember it. Get mad about it. Just upset. The emotional reaction to this will help you remember this. Because that's, FHA's the down payment, but it's not a bargain. It's just the down payment's less. And if your buyer only has that much money, that's their only choice.
Okay, can you, PMI, private mortgage insurance?
Yep.
What was the MIP?
It's called mortgage insurance premium, MIP. It stands for mortgage insurance premium. It's literally the same thing, but why in the world FHA calls it something different, I don't know. But private mortgage insurance is the same thing as mortgage insurance premium. It's just that FHA calls it something different. And it's just to confuse people new in the real estate, I think. And a few folks that have come back in after a while. But anyway, you're right. So anyway, once I get these figures right, then I can calculate this right because I'm using the right number. Now, I went to the trouble of adding a box right here.
I was gonna ask you about that.
Yes. What is your question? Let's just.
Okay, the maximum conventional loan is $453,100.
Yep.
What if it's a $500,000 house or more?
Okay, the money that put it'll be a jumbo loan,
A jumbo loan, okay.
which will be non-conforming, and then you'll define that from a different bucket of money, but it'll be called a jumbo. But this, or you'll just put the difference down. You put 60, 70, 80,000, whatever you got to put down in order to get that loan amount. If it's going to be a conforming loan, that's the maximum as of the first of this year that the Fannie Mae will loan on a conforming standard loan. And these are current as of the first year. FHA's went up. It's $294,515 now. So if you're getting a $400,000 sale, you can go FHA, no problem, but that's all they're going to loan you. You're going to put the rest up front in cash. So that's why you tend to go conventional on the bigger tickets, because you've got a bigger maximum loan amount that still plays within the conforming rules. And VA's maximum loan amount, 424.1. That's the most they're going to loan on a VA loan. Now you can pay the rest in cash. So you're buying $1 million property, well, just put $600,000 down and go VA. I don't know why you'd ever want to do that.
In that instance, let's just say that they're buying one that's $450 and that's $424.
Yeah.
I'm just curious, what is the appraiser gonna say?
He'll hit your sales price because he's going to know what it is if it's worth it. Still got to be worth it, but he's going to go for your sales price. Here's what I suggest, Lucretia. Call some of them. I said, could you just help me understand you?
I hate you.
Yeah. But that's what we've done, and we have done that. We've had Brian Queen come into our training room. We've had Aaron Emerson come in. I forget who, one other one. They come in, and we get to just quiz them. How do you think? What are your guidelines or real standards of practice when you have this or that situation? And that's what I have notes in my Evernotes and other places on every time we've had those guys come in. I type like crazy to see if I can document how they thought that day. They might change.
They change.
And every once in a while, we have the question, well, I mean, just remind me of somebody in that chair, Richard recently said, I've got a VA, I believe it was a VA transaction, but there's an oil derrick over here, not far from from that house. And there was a time, I believe, when it had to be 500 feet from the dwelling. It's now 250 or 200. It changed recently, where you don't have to have as much distance between your property and that oil derrick, or it could be a pump jack that's sitting there running all day and night just on somebody else's lot across the street. But it's got to be a certain number of feet. But that changed. They reduced the distance recently by rule.
Whose requirement was that?
FHA.
Are they
Or
safer
VA.
now or something, or?
I don't know. Apparently they've had enough blow up to say, well, it doesn't hit this, when it blow up, it doesn't go that far. I don't know.
I'm like,
I don't
getting
know.
access to it.
But I mean, that's an example of these rules changing. And in fact, there was the time when the mortgage insurance premiums were less. They've always been upfront and monthly on the FHA, always. The VA funding fee in my career has always been there. And the conventional has always had just a monthly amount. So when you get over here, because see, all the rest of this stuff, you guys are just going to be able to kind of fill in the blanks. And, have I got a conventional? Have I got a FHA? Or have I got a VA transaction? And what's all the numbers underneath? Well, the appraiser's probably going to charge about $500, and the credit report's probably going to be about $55, and tax service fee's probably going to be about $100. Underwriting fee's going to be about this much. But up here, I'm going to stop with this up when we get done up here. I'm not going down to the bottom part of this. You guys just look at it and see what it says. Fill it in the blank. It's going to be close. But now that you've got this number right, you can then take your principal and interest and calculate your interest rate. What are you using to calculate your principal and interest? You got a calculator, or what do you do? Got a calculator? Which one?
Yeah, QP.
Yep, qualifier +2, +3. What else? Jim, do you use one?
I figure it on the app.
On the, on the, one of the apps. The apps do get the payment right, generally.
You said something earlier about the transaction desk app. So is that what, because you said for the expense sheet, so is that what this does on that?
Yeah, on the transaction desk, instead of dot loop, if you go to transaction desk, which is what the MLS provides, that does the same thing as dot loop. It has all the forms on it. You can fill them out. You can send them out to other people, and people that are not with Keller Williams tend to use transaction desk more than they use dot loop. So they get a little frustrated when we send stuff to them dot loop because they're just not familiar with it or as familiar with it. But the difference is on transaction desk, if you put $1,000 in there, it automatically calculates it. You don't have to add it later. You get down to the sum and it'll already be added up for you. So you don't have to calculate. That's the only thing. With Susanna, when she does these, she just pulls transaction desk up on the expense sheets and plugs in the numbers, and it summarizes them automatically at the bottom, and she doesn't have to add them. Otherwise, on dot loop, which is what I pulled this from, you got to add them. And then you got to make sure you didn't miss one. And then hit one extra number or one less than 0, somewhere. So add it down, up, and at least twice to make sure you at least calculated it right if you're doing it manually. So anyway, this is the FHA. I took the FHA figure on top up here. 193,378, which is a total loan amount at 3.75% interest, and I did the calculation for that on my with my qualifier +2.
What is that?
Oh, my God.
This is what happens when I don't take your class.
Oh, I know, and that's the sad truth.
Oh,
Let's just see if I can let me see if I'm any good here. What's that? Oh, I love that kind of question. Where's calculators? Right there, right here. No, you can't see them. I know you can't see them. But hang on a minute. Oh, hang on just a minute. Source. Source. Oh, source. Not that one. That one? No, I don't think it's that one. Is it this one? Is this? Where is it? There it is. I bet you. Come on, baby. Boom! There it is. Andrew, that is pretty slick, isn't it? Well, he's not even watching. Look here. I got the calculator on the screen.
So that's you got that as an app
It's
on your deal?
Yep. Once I put it on my phone, it ended up on my iPad. It went everywhere. My phone one looks a little different from this, but it works the same.
You
But
said
I like
a
this.
calculator like that.
Yeah, now here's what I'm doing.
So what's the difference in this calculator opposed to,
Easy to use. Let me show you.
okay, because I have like a,
Yeah, scientific calculator or something.
well, yeah, that one and then the other.
Let me just show you here. I've got it up, and I'm gonna take my FHA loan amount, 196,378. That's my total loan amount. 196,378. And I just hit the loan amount button. And then I put 3.75, and that's my interest rate. And then I put 30 years, that's my term, and then I hit payment. And there is 906.62. I rounded it to 910.
Oh, well, we have this same little thing that we can do on the MLS. It has a mortgage calculator.
Yeah.
And it will break down and,
this is like $20 to get this calculator.
That's right. It's $40 if you actually go buy the calculator. It's $20 if you put them on your phone, so pick your poison. But at the end of the day, all I'm asking is what do you use, and use something that's not hard to use. Now, I like this one. This will do all kinds of other things besides this. However, one of the things I'll just show you, once in a while you're listing a house for 180 days. And so this is what, 4/4/2018. And I'm going to list it for how many days would I want to list it for?
Lasts about
180, all right, plus 180. And that would be that it expires October 1st of 2018. That's 180 days exactly. Because you got some months with 31 and some with 30, and this just does it. So there's another, I just use the tool because it does things besides just the calculation. But if I want to do a quick, it's just simple and easy to use because I just put my loan amount, hit loan amount. I can just put, anyway, it does a lot of things.
how'd you do that date thing again? I was looking down at that and.
Well, all right, I'll show you. I'll put the date. I'm going to put 4, and then I hit this thing that's got 2 dots up here.
Oh.
And then I hit 4 again. That's today. And I hit the dot again. And then I put the year in. Okay, that gives me my year. Then I hit plus sign, and I put the number of days. Say I need 140 days listing. That's all it'll give me. I just put 140 in there and hit the plus sign or equal, and it'll give me the date. In the future, that's exactly that number. Instead of you sitting there saying, well, that's what we usually do. I'm going to list it for 6 months. So let's see, this is the 4th of April, 4th of May, 4th of June, 4th of July, 4th of August, 4th of October. Well, you'd be
That
all.
just makes you look smarter.
Oh, yeah. And some of us need it.
Yeah. Hey, when I checked on the Chicago thing.
Yep.
And when I did the payment, it comes 909.45.
That's what I got.
Isn't that funny?
Yeah, and I forget what let me see. Yeah, this is the top one was rounded. So anyway, 910 is what I put up
It
there
was
because
still,
it's
yeah,
rounded.
I
to
would
that.
round it to 910.
And so I did something different there because it came up 906 again.
So you use the loan amount, the total loan amount.
Yep.
That's with the MIP
Yep,
or the VA.
yep,
And then, so you put that in, like the 196,378 for loan amount, and then you get the 3.75% interest in a 30-year term, and then the payment.
yep. That's right. That's right. So anyway, and like I said, I want you to, round it. 909 or 9, whatever, round it up. Because I want it by design, I want this to be a little bit less than I told you. Not a lot, but a little bit less, just because I'm.
Because it's always better.
Under-promise, over-deliver is the philosophy. Let's just always do that. Everything you're doing, set their expectations so they'll be happy at the end, because at the end, you're going to be asking for referrals. If that is the opposite direction, it's harder to ask for the referral when the payment's $20 higher than you said it was going to be. Or they brought $200 more to closing than you said that they needed. It's harder to ask for that referral than it is the opposite. So anyway, 910, and that's the interest rate, 30 years, and I've rounded it. So then I said, okay, this by design is set up to run a first mortgage and a second mortgage, where somebody would get maybe an 8% first mortgage and borrow the rest of it on a second. That's the way it's designed. I just used the form to show you how to calculate these each separately. So you'd have the VA calculation next. So the FHA one's this one, the VA one is this one, same sales price, same everything else, but the principal and interest on the VA one is $947. The FHA one's $910. Why? Because you borrowed a lot more. Or a lot less. On FHA, you only borrowed $196,378. On VA, you borrowed $204,300. That's why it's that much more. Because there was no down payment. The net effect of that is you're going to pay higher monthly payment. Because you got a higher loan amount. So, now, conventional, you got private mortgage insurance premium, and then mutual mortgage insurance. Mutual mortgage insurance and mortgage insurance premium is the same thing. I don't know. You pick whatever one you want to use. The bottom line is, the private mortgage insurance, see, remember, we haven't done any insurance yet, private mortgage insurance for the lender up to now on conventional, because they didn't charge anything up front. So now we're going to get, there's where that 0.91% is divided by. So if your loan amount, $204,000 times 0.91%, 0.91 in percent key gives you a number, and then you divide that by 12, and that's how much goes in the blank. That's the $144.08. FHAs, you've already paid it once. You put 1.75% up over here, and now you're coming over here and put 0.85, and yes, that sticks the same. It's the same every time. This one, remember, it changed depending on the credit score. This is a guy under 740 credit score with a 95% loan. But on my little help sheet or those calculations a while ago, I had that second page at the top where it said if your score is above 740, it's like 0.63 instead of 0.91. So anyway, but whatever that number is, that's the worst case scenario right here.
And that's for conventional.
Conventional only. And that's the only way they collect it. They just collect it in the monthly payment. They don't have it up front. So now you've got your principal and interest. Your mortgage insurance premium, one of them on FHA is $136.71. The VA, conventional one is $144.08 if you were going conventional. So now you can add this, and we've already figured out the insurance. It was 1.5% of the sales price because we didn't know the age of the roof or the credit score. So 1.5% of $200,000 is $3,000.
On this monthly,
Pardon me?
the one that's collected monthly on the,
PMI?
yes.
Yep.
each time it's gonna be on what the balance is, principal, but for each month?
Well, yeah, it's gonna be paid monthly in the monthly payment, but what you're looking at is how you calculate what it's gonna be. Do you use 0.91 or do you use 0.63 or 0.43 or, depending on how much money they put down and their credit score.
Do you mean, is it gonna change as it goes down?
No, what I was saying, let's just say we're at the 90.91. To determine what it is for their monthly, because you said
Yeah,
there's usually an upfront and then a monthly. So is it gonna be, as each month go by and they make their payment, they're still paying that 0.91% based off of what
the
their,
original amount.
of the original amount, so it's not gonna go
It's not gonna
down
drop.
to what their current principal is.
Starts out that same figure and stays that way.
And the PMI, that's on conventional, and it doesn't have an upfront.
There's nothing up front, so they're just paying in the monthly amount. But it's still gonna be based on whatever's appropriate for their credit score and down payment.
Okay, it's just gonna be 0.91% of what the original purchase price amount was
Sales
from
price,
the beginning.
that's right.
Even if it's 10 years down the road, so it's best for them to refinance.
Yeah, 10 years down the road,
Hopefully.
they may not have any because they paid it down enough to where it's an 80% loan already. Now, here's the deal. See, that formula, I'm trying to find my, why I don't have it. Right here. Where'd that go? I didn't turn it off. Or I guess I did. Back to that again. See where the 0.91 is? It's for a 95% loan with a score under 740. But if you know the guy's got a 750 score, 741, well, it's 0.63 for him with 5% down. But the guy that's putting 10% down, he's not paying 0.91, he's only paying 0.73 if he's got a 740 score or less. Or if he's over 740, it's only 0.41. So that's where you're getting those numbers. So now you're connecting it to where it goes on here.
Right.
So, but it doesn't change. That's the point there. It doesn't change. Let me leave this so I can get back to it. All right, now where was I at? Nope, not right there. Here? Yeah, here.
I just wondered if it was interest, based off of the current
Holy
principal.
cow. We covered 2 listing forms and the expense sheets. And we're done. Now, just let me finish it up here. So your tax bill was $2,500. I think I calculated or just estimated that. So divide that by 12 and it's $210 a month. And the insurance bill was $3,000, divided that by 12 and it's $250. So now you're adding whatever the principal and interest is, whatever the mortgage insurance premium is to the insurance and taxes, and you get a figure. Now, I spent a lot of time on this, but that's the most important number to that seller or that buyer that there is how much a month. And so it's very, very common for us not to know how to get to that right. And so spent a lot of time on it. We have a whole lot of other pages I could have covered, but the time flies for God's sake. Now, the rest of this, let me just go down here. See, here's your prepaid interest. It's that number of days times, I used so much a day, but 14 days at 21, not 20. And there's your first year's premium, insurance premium up front. But see here, it says here, hazard insurance, county taxes, flood insurance, 3 months. So just put 3 months in there, even though some of them are only collecting 2. That says put 3, I just put 3 in it. It maybe pads it a little, sometimes it's not enough. That changes a little bit with the year. The only thing that changed on this form, because this is the old form, the new form has survey/mortgage insurance inspection already pre-printed right there, and it changed on February 15th. Where it was a seller expense prior to February 15th, now it's a buyer expense. on February 15th, so it's actually about 120. But, putting a figure of 150, these numbers are all equal, exact, or padded just a little. And so that's the only thing that changed. I'll remind you, since Leslie's not here, get your Stewart title or whatever title company rate chart out and make sure whatever sales price you're selling it at, that you look at that chart for that figure. The rest of them are pretty much constant. Those don't change, these don't change, but that one does change depending on the sales price. So, anyway, holy cow, we've covered 2 listing forms and expense sheet, the top part only, 3 hours. I promised you I'd get you out of here at 1:45. I can't not keep my promise. Now, here's what I suggest. Look at the rest of the forms that you've got in there and read them. What do they say? There's a short sale form in there people don't know exists. But then all the others, the counteroffer form, all those forms that are in there, just look at it. Bill of sale is in there. Thank you, Lisa, for bringing that one up. That bill of sale is in there. You can feel free, copy it. It's safe to use that one because it does deal with that it's subject to the closing of this transaction and whether or not you want it to be as is. All right.
Use this like furniture.
Yeah, furniture, refrigerators, washers, dryers, personal property like that. That's the lender does not want to make a 30-year loan on it because they don't last that long.
And I found out that you don't put see bill of sale on the contract.
No, because that's the same as putting it on there. That's what they're saying is it's personal transaction, like going to the garage sale and buying it. Except the lender's thinking if they know that you're doing that, then they say, well, now you're adding $1,000 worth of value to this in your mind. So I guess we'll discount $1,000 and then let's go. Now we've got a $1,000 loan amount problem. So that's what the net effect
Pay
is.
something. Actually, why don't they just?
No,
Well, my lawyer,
Be zero.
dollar or
As long
zero.
as it's.
my lawyer client, who's the buyer, he changed my $0 to $10. And I'm thinking, I think I put $10 in there. I put 0. He says it's not a contract if it doesn't have some sort of.
Amount in, so maybe you're,
50 cents.
yeah. So unless you have an attorney for a buyer,
Yeah.
it isn't gonna matter.
You know, yeah.
And his girlfriend is a real estate lawyer, so.
Yeah, so then you got
Wow,
it.
you need to put them on retainer, huh?
Yes.
Well, that's why I would put at least $1 in there. I mean, because basically they have their,
That's what I was.
And so, does he just bring $10 to closings?
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. We're winding it up. That's all we can do for today. We'll be back another day and cover another form or two. Thank you. Now we're going to
Thanks,
shut this.
Don.
You're welcome.